No need for the cake, just throw it away, my husband said on my birthday. Then, he had the nerve to go on a trip with his mistress. I thought this might be our last chance to fix things, but I was wrong. I really don't think I can keep living with him anymore. Understood. If you want me to throw out the cake, then I'll throw out something else important to you, too. Get ready, because I'm going to get rid of something that matters most to me, my name. My name is Sarah. I'm 28 years old and work in an office. My husband, Bob, also works in an office, but at a different company. We don't have any kids. Bob and I met a year ago at a party thrown by a senior colleague. I'm not very interesting. I'm a bit overweight, shy, and tend to be gloomy. My hobby is reading comic books, and I prefer staying indoors, so I was only invited to the party to fill up space. Knowing this, I didn't talk much and mostly just sipped my drink by the edge of the table. Despite this, Bob, who was handsome and outgoing, started talking to me. He shared stories about his travels and his collection of vintage vinyl records, which I found really interesting. When it was time to leave, he asked for my contact information. I was surprised but happy, so we exchanged Facebook details. The next day, he messaged me, wanting to meet up just the two of us. At first, I thought this was a joke, but I was excited and agreed. After a few dates, he confessed his feelings for me. I had never had a boyfriend before, so I was thrilled and accepted. 3 months into our relationship, he proposed, and we got married. I felt like I was living a dream, marrying someone as wonderful as Bob. I thought my life as a happy wife was about to begin. But as soon as we got married, Bob changed completely. While dating, he was very kind, but after the wedding, he started leaving all the household chores to me. He would just relax, watching TV or listening to music when he got home from work. Sometimes, I'd call him for dinner, but he wouldn't hear me over the loud music and wouldn't come right away. On his days off, he'd leave me alone and go out with friends, saying he had plans. When I asked him to help with chores, he'd reply, "I'm busy." When I reminded him that I also work and could use help, he'd say, "I have to hang out with my friends, unlike you, who don't have many because you're so gloomy." That comment hurt. I know I'm not very social, but I didn't think he should say such rude things to me. I wanted to avoid a fight, so I kept quiet. Slowly, Bob began to criticize the way I handle all the cooking and cleaning, and soon Bob started insulting me. He said things like, "You should be grateful that a great guy like me married someone plain and overweight like you." I thought a real gentleman wouldn't say those things to his wife and would help out around the house. If he had a problem with how I clean, he could at least take care of his own room. The only thing he seemed to care about was his record collection. I also love reading comic books and have collected a lot over the years. One day, I noticed that all my comic books were gone from my room. When I asked Bob about it, I suspected the worst. He casually said, "Oh, those? They were in the way, so I threw them out." I couldn't believe it. Those books were important to me, and some were hard to find. When I protested, he just said, "Your comic books were overflowing into the living room. You should outgrow this childish hobby." How dare he criticize my interests and throw away my things without asking? If he was going to be this awful and verbally abusive, why did he even marry me? I realized that Bob probably just wanted a free housekeeper. When he met me at that party, he must have thought I was an easy target because I was quiet and submissive. This realization made me cry many nights in bed. It's manageable now, but if we had kids, I shuddered to think about the future. Then one day, a friend told me she saw Bob walking arm in arm with a woman who wasn't me in the hotel district. He had said he was going out to meet a friend, and I had thought that friend was a man. What did it mean that he was with a woman? Could he be cheating? So, I hired a private investigator. As I suspected, Bob was cheating on me. The other woman was a junior colleague named Susan, and he had been seeing her since we got married. Whenever he said he was going out with friends or colleagues, it was mostly dates with Susan. How could he dump all the housework on me and then cheat? I thought about divorcing him and even talked to a lawyer, but part of me couldn't completely hate Bob, the man who made even a plain and boring woman like me dream about marriage. So, I decided to give it one last chance. This coming Saturday is my birthday, and if Bob celebrated it with me, I thought I might hold off on the divorce. At dinner, I asked Bob, "Do you remember what's coming up this Saturday?" He looked confused and asked if something special was happening. I was shocked to see he had completely forgotten. My hopes began to fade. When I continued, "It's my birthday," he finally said, "Oh, yeah, now that you mention it, well, it falls on a day off this year." I was thinking about getting a cake and having it with Bob for my birthday. "You promise, right? Don't make any other plans," I said. feeling a bit anxious. Bob seemed reluctant but agreed. Then came the Friday before my birthday. During dinner, Bob said, "I have a business trip tomorrow." "What? Tomorrow is my birthday, and we promised to eat cake together. I've already made a reservation," I protested. He replied, "Well, it's work. I can't help it. You need to understand my job. I'll be gone for 2 days and 1 night, and I'll be back Sunday evening. Please pack for me." "What about the cake?" I asked. "Just throw it away if you don't need it," he said casually. I was shocked. How could he say to throw it away on my special day after I went through the trouble of reserving it? I started to feel suspicious about his business trip. While Bob was in the shower, I checked his smartphone and found messages with his mistress. They were planning a trip together for 2 days and 1 night. The messages said things like, "Are you sure your wife hasn't found out? And this Saturday is Sarah's birthday. She wants to celebrate, but it's a hassle. I don't want her demanding gifts, so I thought I'd go on a trip with you." I felt devastated. I almost cried from the shock, but managed to hold back my tears. I took a screenshot of their conversation on my phone. I didn't even want gifts. I just wanted to celebrate my birthday with him. If he had agreed to eat cake with me, I might have still believed that he cared about me a little, but seeing those messages with his mistress shattered any remaining hope I had. On my birthday, Bob boldly said at the front door, "I'm heading out now. While I'm on my business trip, can you clean my room for me? I'm going to pick up the cake we reserved today. Do you still want me to throw away your share?" he asked. "Stop nagging," I said. "It's fine," I replied. "Understood. I'll clean your room and throw away anything I think you don't need," he said. "Is that okay with you?" he asked. "Yeah, it's fine," I said. With that, Bob left for what he claimed was a business trip, but I knew it was really a trip with his mistress. I remembered when he asked if I could throw away anything I thought he didn't need, and I recorded our conversation on my voice recorder, so he couldn't take it back now. Once inside Bob's room, I vacuumed and cleaned the windows. Then, I got rid of things he didn't want, like old clothes, piles of stationery, and his record collection that he had spent a lot of money and time building. I packed everything up and put it in the storeroom. Then, I placed the filled-out divorce papers on the living room table and left the house. After all, it was my birthday, and I was going to enjoy it. First, I picked up the reserved cake. Then, I booked a room in a luxury hotel I had always wanted to visit. I ate the cake in my hotel room. Bob had told me to throw it away, but I couldn't waste food, so I ate both pieces. It was delicious, but I worried about gaining weight again, so I needed to start dieting. After that, I went shopping at nearby stores and took a stroll by the sea. I had spent all my days off doing housework, so having a day like this was a first in a long time. Just as I was enjoying my day, I got a call from Bob on Sunday night. Honestly, I didn't want to answer, but I had to. "Hello?" I said. "Hey, where the heck are you? I got back from my business trip, and you're not home. There's no dinner ready." Bob was ruining my relaxing hotel stay with his calls. "What's going on? Why are you in a hotel? Where's my dinner?" he shouted. I replied, "Well, I'm staying in a hotel for a bit. There's a lovely view here. Want me to send you a picture?" He didn't care about that. "I found the divorce papers. What's going on?" "If there are divorce papers, you should know what to do, right? Are you planning to make a paper airplane with them? Just sign it and take it to City Hall," I said. "Are you serious? You want a divorce?" Bob asked. "That's right. I'm sick and tired of this. You just leave everything to me and never help with the chores. The first thing you do when you call me is get mad because there's no dinner ready. It's unbelievable." He then asked about his record collection. "What happened to my records?" "I threw them away," I replied. Bob's voice got louder. "You threw them away? Are you kidding me? You knew I cherished those. But you told me before your trip that I could throw away anything I thought was unnecessary. You said it was okay. I even recorded our conversation. Want to listen? Besides, you threw away my comic books too, didn't you?" I continued. "Don't just drop divorce papers on me and leave," he yelled. "Fine, let's meet and talk," I said. A few days later, I didn't want to see Bob, but we had to meet at the lawyer's office. Bob looked shabby, with unkempt hair and wrinkled clothes. I used to iron his clothes, and I thought maybe he ran out of conditioner, but he should be able to buy his own. Seeing Bob like this made me wonder why I ever liked him. I was worried about how I'd feel when I saw him again, but it turned out I had no reason to worry. When the discussion started, I said, "I haven't changed my mind about wanting a divorce. This is the amount I want for alimony." When I told him the amount, Bob shouted, $30 million? That's way too much. Just because you didn't help with the housework? I asked. That's not all. You've constantly insulted me, calling me fat and plain, and worst of all, I have evidence of your cheating. I showed him the screenshots from the private investigator. You've been cheating on me since we got married, even on my birthday. You lied about a business trip to go on a vacation with your mistress. Considering all of this, $30 million is still not enough. Sarah, did you know about the affair? Bob asked, looking at the photos. He turned pale when I nodded. Did you think I didn't notice, because I'm not smart? And you threw away my beloved comics? That's because you threw away my records, he replied. Oh, I lied about throwing them away. I told him. I thought about it, but I didn't want to be blamed for it, so I kept them. They're stored in the back of the storeroom. What? Bob looked relieved. Why are you so relieved? The fact that you threw away my comics hasn't changed, so you should compensate me for that. And about the cake, you said to throw it away, but I couldn't waste food, so I ate both pieces. When Bob asked if he was right, I chuckled and said, no, I didn't throw anything away. I told you I would get rid of things I don't need, and I've done just that. Well, actually, I'm about to get rid of something. Huh? Bob looked confused. I smiled wider and said, you're the thing I need the least, and I'm going to get rid of you completely. Understand this, the alimony will not be less than this amount. If you argue, it'll be higher. Bob paused and said, I'm sorry, I won't cheat anymore, and I'll help with the housework. Because I'm here? I asked. No, that's not it, Bob babbled, but I interrupted him. I intend to divorce you. I don't want to hold on to trash, because I'm a neat freak. At that moment, Bob looked defeated and said, I'm trash. His expression was priceless. After that, we divorced. All communication has gone through our lawyers, so I haven't seen Bob since. According to my lawyer, Bob, who had always left the housework to me, didn't have any domestic skills. He briefly lived with Susan, but she couldn't manage the house either, and their place quickly became a mess. They were always eating out, and Bob started gaining weight. His once handsome face now looked quite sad. Eventually, Susan broke up with Bob and found another job. Gossip spread at work about their affair, making him uncomfortable, but he couldn't quit because I asked for a lot in alimony. As for me, I switched jobs and moved, enjoying living alone. I'm not overwhelmed by housework anymore, and no one gives me a hard time. I'm happy, plus, since I'm not stressed, my face looks brighter, and I've been told I look a little thinner. If I keep losing weight, I might just make Bob regret everything even more.
I'm Ellie, and this is where my journey begins. I grew up in a small town, moving from one foster home to another until I finally found a place with the Thompsons. They gave me the priceless gift of stability, something I had longed for all my life. Life was pretty plain until I headed to college, becoming the first in my foster family to venture into the big city. I immersed myself in studying languages, with Japanese being my focus. After working tirelessly, I landed a job as a translator at an international trading company, a huge achievement for a small-town girl like me. One ordinary Tuesday, I walked into a cozy cafe near my office and ordered my usual black coffee. That's when I saw him. Jack, tall and with a smile that could light up a room. He was on his phone, looking all business yet somehow relaxed. When our eyes met, I felt an undeniable connection. Hey, I've never seen you here before, I said, trying to sound casual as I settled into my seat with my coffee. He looked up, his smile widening. Just trying to escape that office chaos. I'm Jack, he said, extending his hand. I shook it and felt a spark. I'm Ellie, so what brings Mr. Escape the office to my favorite spot? I asked, intrigued. Good coffee and better company, it seems, he quipped, and from that moment, we hit it off. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and before we knew it, a year had passed. Our conversations had evolved beyond coffee chats. Jack was a city guy, charming and worldly, but we both knew life wasn't always smooth sailing. After a year of dating, we decided to get married, and I was over the moon. I wanted him to meet the Thompsons, the people who shaped me into who I am. My foster parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, were salt-of-the-earth types who lived simply and worked hard. They had been fixing up their house, so they rented a tiny apartment that was nothing special but filled with warmth and love. It may not be much, but it's filled with good memories, I told Jack. He nodded, but I caught the look in his eyes as he scanned the cramped space. He was clearly uncomfortable. We spent the weekend there, and my folks treated him like royalty, but Jack was distant, always checking his watch, eager to return to the city. As we drove home that Sunday night, the silence in the car felt heavy. "Jack, you've been quiet. What's up?" I finally asked. He sighed, clearly reluctant to speak. "Look, Ellie, your folks are nice, but we come from different worlds," he said, his words steaming. I fought to keep my composure. "What does that mean?" "It's just different. I'm not used to this simple life," he admitted, trying to smooth things over quickly. I turned to look out the window, biting my lip as I considered the differences between our lives. "Jack, I don't need fancy things, but we have to respect where we both come from," I said firmly. He nodded. "Right. Of course, I love you, Ellie. That's what matters," he said, but a part of me wondered if we truly understood each other. That night, I lay awake, reflecting on the simple life I cherished and the complicated world I was stepping into. Just days after our awkward visit to my childhood home, it was my turn to meet Jack's side of the family, his mother, Vivian. High-rise apartment in the city center was decked out in lavish decor that screamed wealth. When we arrived, she greeted us at the door, dressed in designer clothes from head to toe, and her apartment looked like something out of a magazine. "Ellie, isn't it? And what is it you do?" Vivian asked, sizing me up as if I were a product she was considering. "I'm a translator. I work with Japanese clients at a trading company," I replied, trying to sound confident. "Oh, impressive," she said with a half smile, but her eyes were scanning me for flaws. When I mentioned my background and my foster parents, her expression shifted. "From the province and fostered, you say? That doesn't seem quite fitting for my Jack." Jack jumped in quickly. "Mom, please. Ellie's wonderful and I love her. We're getting married." "Married? When's this happening? How are you planning it?" Vivian's tone changed to one that felt a bit too invasive. "We're thinking of something small and intimate. Just us in Hawaii," I said, hoping to highlight the romance. Her eyes nearly bulged. "Hawaii? Just the two of you?" "No, that won't do. What will my friends think if I can't even throw my only son a proper wedding?" I tried to stay calm. "It's our day, Vivian. We just want something that feels true to us, without all the fuss." That was the tipping point. She huffed and declared the discussion over, walking out of the room. Jack glanced at me, his expression apologetic, and whispered, "Let me talk to her. We'll sort this out." 4 months flew by, and despite the rocky start, there we were in Hawaii, ready to say, "I do." It was supposed to be an intimate ceremony, just Jack and me. But of course, Vivian had other plans. She showed up, camera in hand, eager to capture every moment. It felt like she was lurking, ensuring she had plenty to post online. Jack seemed oblivious, basking in the sun and the joy of the ceremony. I tried to smile through it, leaning in to whisper, "I thought it would be just us." He squeezed my hand, his eyes sincere. "I know, I'm sorry, she's just excited. Let's try to enjoy our day." But Vivian was buzzing around us, her phone always up, shouting, "Smile here. Oh, this will look fabulous on my feed." I felt like a prop in her social media showcase rather than a bride on her wedding day. What was meant to be our special moment had turned into just another one of Vivian's extravagant productions. Coming home as newlyweds should have been about cozy, love-filled days. Breakfast in bed, slow dances in the living room, the works. At least it started that way. Jack slipped a stunning ring on my finger the day we got back, one that caught the light and sparkled endlessly. "It's been in my family for generations," he said, his eyes shining with pride. "Be careful with that ring. It's more than just expensive, it's an heirloom." Vivian chimed in, hovering over us like a dark cloud on a sunny day. Her reminder felt more like a warning, making my heart sink a little. The first few weeks, Jack and I were in our blissful bubble, stealing kisses and cooking together. But then Vivian started dropping by unannounced, like a storm that had settled over our home. It all began one afternoon when I was folding laundry, and the doorbell rang. There she was, that familiar look on her face, as if she were about to inspect a military base. "Just checking in on my favorite newlyweds," she said, but her eyes darted around the apartment as if she were searching for something wrong. I tried to be polite, making small talk, even as she wandered into the kitchen, her fingers gliding over every surface. "Ellie, darling, do you ever clean? And where are the fresh vegetables?" A man needs his greens. Her tone dripped with disapproval. Jack just shrugged it off later when I told him. She means well, babe. Just try to go with it. Go with it. My frustration bubbled up. Jack, she's treating me like I'm on trial in my own home. He kissed my forehead casually as if that would solve everything. She's lonely, Ellie. Let's cut her some slack. But that slack turned into something else entirely. It escalated until one day I came home late from work, riding high on the excitement of signing a major contract with a new client from Japan. That is until I found Vivian in my living room, an uninvited storm brewing. I heard you've been spending a lot of time at the office late nights. She raised an eyebrow, her voice thick with suspicion. Yeah, it's a big project. Lots of new opportunities. I tried to explain, but she clearly had other ideas. 2 days later, she personally showed up at my office, counting the men working with me out loud and loudly suggesting I could be having an affair with one of them. Without invitation, she barged into my boss's office, eyeing him because he was elderly, and declared, well, she definitely won't mess with the old man. I was mortified, my face burning as red as a beetroot. I demanded she leave and apologized profusely to my boss and colleagues for the disruption. Thankfully, Mr. Jackson had a sense of humor and just laughed it off. But the damage was done. That night, I lay awake, wondering how we'd gotten here. I'd had enough. I cornered Jack in our bedroom, my voice low and tense. Your mom crossed the line today, Jack. She's accusing me of cheating, and it has to stop. He sighed deeply, weariness etched on his face. Please just try to get along for me. But getting along increasingly felt like just putting up with nonsense. Things between Jack and me were getting rocky, largely due to Vivian's constant whispers in his ear. Jack had begun to nitpick everything about me, my clothing choices, my work hours. He had never minded before, but suddenly everything was an issue. Ellie, why do you have to wear that to work? He frowned one morning as I got ready. I was simply wearing a blouse and skirt, nothing fancy. It's professional, Jack. What's wrong with it? I replied, adjusting my skirt. It's too much. You're just inviting comments from all those guys. His tone had a sharp edge, and I realized this was about more than just my outfit. This became a regular occurrence, but it peaked on my birthday. My boss gave me a small gift, just a book with a note that read, "To my practically daughter." It was an innocent, kind gesture, but Jack blew it out of proportion. You see? That's exactly what I'm talking about. Why is he giving you gifts? It's not right, Ellie. Jack was furious when he saw the book. It's just a book. He's like a father figure to me. I tried to explain, but Jack's eyes were clouded with suspicion, all thanks to Vivian's meddling. The tension at home had become unbearable, so I was relieved to head out on a business trip to a neighboring city. Our company was setting up a new factory, and I looked forward to a break from the drama. The trip went smoothly, and I was wrapping up with dinner alongside our Japanese partners when I noticed shadows lurking near the restaurant. My heart raced as I walked toward my hotel. The dimly lit street made me uneasy, and the shadows crept closer. Panicked, I asked 2 colleagues to walk me back. As we neared the hotel entrance, the light from the lanterns revealed who was following me, Jack and Vivian. What the hell, Jack? What are you doing here? I blurted out, unable to hide my shock. Vivian stepped forward, her expression twisted in anger. We're making sure you're not up to any trouble. We can't trust you around all these men, she spat. My colleagues stared in disbelief, and I felt my face burn with embarrassment. This is ridiculous. You're both acting like I'm some kind of criminal. But Vivian wasn't having it. I'll be telling your parents about this. They should know what kind of woman you've turned out to be. I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. Go ahead, they'll laugh you out of town. The ride back was silent. Jack and his mother sat in the front, leaving me alone in the back seat, staring out the window as city lights blurred into streaks of color. Tears filled my eyes. I was married to the man I loved, yet I felt trapped in a nightmare, with Vivian as the relentless specter that wouldn't go away. When Vivian actually followed through on her threat and showed up at my parents' place, I was in disbelief. I couldn't believe it when Mom called, her voice trembling as she recounted the situation. She's here, Ellie, my mother said, tone strained. She demanded to see your father right away. So, I gave her the address to his workshop, my heart sinking as I realized how far this had gone. I felt my stomach drop as my mom spoke. Dad's at his workshop, where he spends most of his days crafting and creating. He's truly in his element, she continued, her voice steady but laced with tension. Your mother-in-law went there, saw your father in his work clothes, stained from the glass. She just scoffed. I gripped the phone tighter, bracing myself for what was coming next. When your father went over to greet her, he apologized for not shaking her hand. His hands were all stained from work, you know. She looked at his hands. Ellie made a face and said something awful about coming to this backwater for nothing. My heart sank further as I listened. She says she understands now why you turned out the way you did and just left without another word. Thanks for telling me, Mom. I need to think about what to do. I hung up, feeling a tumult of anger and hurt swirling inside me. It wasn't long before Vivian made her next move. The very next day, she cornered me in the living room, her eyes cold and judgmental. Ellie, now I see where you get your manners, or should I say, lack thereof. Your father is just an ordinary worker, his hands permanently dirtied. What kind of upbringing, what kind of manners could you possibly teach any children? I shuddered at her words. They struck me like daggers. But before I could respond, Jack walked in. Instead of defending me, he went straight to his mother, taking her in his arms. Mom, I'm sorry about all this. Ellie's family, they're just different from us. That was it. The last straw. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Different? Is that your way of saying my family isn't good enough for your high standards? My voice broke, the hurt too deep. Jack looked at me, his eyes empty. It's just how things are, Ellie. We come from different worlds. So that's it, huh? My voice rose, thick with emotion. If I'm such a disgrace, why don't we just end this? If I'm so beneath you, let's get a divorce. Vivian's eyes lit up, almost gleefully. Well, that sounds like a splendid idea. Jack just nodded passively. Maybe that's for the best. I spent the night in our guest room, tears streaming down my face as Vivian's every word replayed in my mind. Each dismissive glance from Jack, the life I thought we were building, it all felt like a lie. The early morning light filtered through the blinds, casting a soft glow across the room as I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand. It was time to make some difficult but necessary calls. First on my list was my boss, Mr. Jackson, whose kindness had always made the stresses of work bearable. Mr. Jackson, it's Ellie, I started, my voice shaky. I'm facing some personal issues and need to take some time off. I can take it unpaid if necessary. Ellie, he replied quickly, concern evident in his voice. You're one of our most valuable team members. Take a paid vacation, sort things out, and come back when you're ready. We'll manage here. His generosity brought a lump to my throat. Thank you. Mr. Jackson, I can't tell you how much this means to me. Next, I dialed my mother, who had always been my anchor in any storm. As soon as she answered, I spilled everything, my words tumbling out in a torrent of emotion. Mom, it's all falling apart here. I can't do this anymore with Jack and his mom. It's just too much. Her voice was calm and soothing. Ellie, we've been prepared for this call. Your father and I are on our way. Just pack what you need. As I ended the call, I glanced around the room, my eyes landing on the few personal items I'd brought into this house, none of which felt like they belonged. I started packing, each item a reminder of the life I thought I'd build with Jack. Vivian appeared at the doorway, her presence like a dark cloud. Remember, Ellie, only take what you bought with your own money. Don't think about grabbing anything else, she said, her voice cold and accusatory. It wasn't long before I heard the gravel crunch under the tires of an old vehicle. Looking out the window, I saw the familiar beat-up pickup truck that belonged to my parents. Jack and Vivian followed me outside, their expressions a mixture of smugness and curiosity. As my parents' truck pulled up, Jack scoffed loudly. Sure that old thing will even make it back? My father stepped out, a quiet strength emanating from him as he faced Jack without a word. He handed over the divorce papers, his eyes steady and unwavering. Jack grabbed the papers and signed them with a smirk, his mother chuckling beside him, glad to be rid of this mess. We arrived at my parents' home, a large, imposing structure that felt more like a sanctuary now. I spent the next few hours unpacking and trying to settle my nerves. The peace of the familiar surroundings slowly calmed me. That evening, as I sat looking out at the garden, my phone rang. It was Vivian. Ellie, you need to return the ring. It's a family heirloom, not a parting gift. I held the phone away for a moment, taking a deep breath before responding. Vivian, that ring was given to me as a wedding gift. If you want it, come and get it yourself. The morning light was just beginning to spill over the horizon. When I spotted Jack and his mother, Vivian, from the upstairs window, They stood at the gate, staring up at the house as if they had wandered into a fairy tale. Their expressions of disbelief were almost comical. A smirk crept across my lips as I watched them from behind the curtain. They looked so out of place against the backdrop of my large, meticulously landscaped front yard, their confusion palpable. I turned away from the window, hearing my parents downstairs, and joined them. We shared a knowing glance before stepping outside. Calm and collected, my parents walked past Jack and Vivian without a word, heading straight for the garage. They pretended not to notice the bewildered stares from my estranged husband and his mother. As the garage door swung open, revealing 3 sleek, high-end cars, I could hear Jack's sharp intake of breath. My father chose a gleaming black sedan, and we all climbed in. Just as we were about to pull out of the driveway, Jack finally found his voice. "Ellie, what is all this? This house? These cars?" I stepped out of the car, approaching them with a calm I hadn't felt in months. "This is my family home, Jack. My father owns a glass factory and several commercial properties. This is where I grew up." Vivian's face contorted in confusion. "But your father, he was wearing work clothes. His hands were dirty." I couldn't help but smile at her naivety. "Yes, Vivian, he was launching a new product line. It's a tradition in his company to get involved hands-on. It doesn't mean he's not successful or wealthy." They stood there, stunned, unable to reconcile the image of the hardworking man they'd seen with the opulence surrounding them. At that moment, a group of neighbors approached, their faces bright with smiles. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson. We heard about your latest charity event. It's wonderful what you're doing, and you've got our support in the mayoral elections." One of them called out cheerfully. My parents nodded and thanked them, while Jack's face twisted with a mixture of awe and regret, his eyes darting between his mother and me. Vivian looked as though she had swallowed something bitter, her earlier arrogance washed away by the undeniable reality before her. I turned back to the car, giving Jack and Vivian one last look. "Well, I guess you see things a little differently now," I said, not unkindly. Their expressions of shock and realization confirmed that the past, with all its hardships and heart-hatches, was finally behind me. But before I could savor the moment, Jack made his move. He shoved his mother aside with such force that she stumbled. "It's all your fault, you know. You pushed her away with your nonsense," he shouted at her, bitterness lacing his words. Turning to me, his demeanor shifted completely. He rushed over, trying to pull me to an embrace, his hands reaching out as if he could erase everything with a simple touch. "Ellie, please listen to me. We were good together, weren't we? I love you. I really do," he pleaded, his voice a desperate whisper. I recoiled from his touch. The warmth we once shared had long been extinguished by his betrayal. "Stop, Jack. Just stop," I said firmly, pushing him away with all the strength I could muster. Quickly, I got into the car, my heart pounding. Without a word, my father pressed the remote control, and the garage doors began to close behind us. Jack and Vivian stood there, calling out, their voices a blend of desperation and disbelief. "Ellie, please forgive us. We didn't mean any of it," Jack yelled, his voice cracking. Vivian, scrambling for the dignity she'd lost, joined in. "Ellie, my dear, I was wrong. Please." As we drove away, the finality of the moment weighed heavily on me, but a part of me craved closure, a definitive end to this chapter of my life. When we reached the end of the driveway, I asked my father to stop the car. Thinking this was his chance, Jack ran up to us, his face lit with hope, while his mother trailed behind, her earlier elegance replaced by desperation. Without a word, I rolled down the window, pulled off my wedding ring, and held it out. Jack's eyes widened as he realized what was about to happen. "This is where it ends, Jack," I said, my voice steady. With that, I threw the ring out of the window. It glittered briefly in the morning sun before landing on the soft grass beside the road. Vivian, ever the opportunist, rushed to where the ring had fallen, her hands scrambling through the grass. I rolled up the window, shutting out their pleas and the painful past they represented. "Let's go, Dad," I said quietly. 2 weeks later, I was back in the city, settled into a new apartment that felt more like home than I had in a long time. I returned to work, where Mr. Jackson welcomed me with open arms and a gentle understanding that eased my transition back into routine. Jack made several attempts to contact me, each one more desperate than the last. He claimed to have cut ties with his mother, begging for another chance, but some things, once broken, can't be mended. I told him it was over for good this time and blocked his number. No more words were needed. Hi, I'm Emma Clark, and I grew up in the small town of Harrow. It's nothing glamorous, just a place where everyone knows each other and secrets have a way of coming to light. After graduating, I dove straight into the retail world, specifically lingerie. To me, it wasn't just a job, it was my passion. I poured my heart and soul into my work, and eventually, I became the proud owner of a chain of lingerie stores ranging from quaint boutiques to upscale outlets. I was dedicated to my business and exceptionally good at it. But as I clocked in the hours, days, and months, I started to feel like something was missing. That's when Michael entered my life. It all began with a simple ping on my phone. A friend request from a sharply dressed guy with piercing eyes. I didn't recognize him, but his profile hinted at a man who had his life together. A lawyer, hence the tailored suit. Curiosity got the best of me and I hit accept. It wasn't long before his first message appeared one evening while I was crunching numbers. Hey Emma, thanks for accepting my request. I noticed we have some friends in common. How's it going? Simple enough, right? But it was his follow-up messages that truly drew me in. He was witty and had a knack for making me laugh even after the longest days. I remember one night we were joking about the worst pickup lines we'd ever heard, and his humor just clicked with me. Michael, have you ever heard this one? Are you a magician? Because whenever I look at you, everyone else disappears. I bet you've heard that one in your line of work, Emma. Oh, for sure, top of the cringe chart. But here's mine. Are you a photographer? Because I really want to leave this shoot. He tacked out a laugh. At least I hoped it was genuine. After a few weeks of messaging, he suggested meeting for coffee to put a real face to the texts. The first time we met was at this little dive I loved, known for its strong brews. He was already there when I walked in, absorbed in a newspaper. When he looked up, the polished image from his profile didn't do him justice. He was even better in person. Emma, wow, you actually look like your pictures. That's a rarity in this city, he said, and I couldn't help but smile. Thanks. I think you look pretty great yourself. Despite his lawyer vibe, he laughed, and the ice melted away instantly. We talked for hours. There was substance to our conversation. Michael asked about my business and my dreams, genuinely listening to my every word. When we had been seeing each other for a year, he decided it was time to take our relationship to the next level. I was closing up shop one chilly evening when he arrived unexpectedly, his breath visible in the cold air as he presented me with a small velvet box. Emma, I've been thinking, he started, looking uncharacteristically nervous. We've been doing so well, you and I think it's time we considered making this permanent. I froze, the keys to my store still in my hand. Michael, are you saying what I think you're saying? His charming, lopsided grin appeared. Yes, I am. Marry me, Emma. Let's not play games anymore. I want you as my partner for life. My heart raced, and a whirlwind of thoughts flooded my mind. Was I ready for marriage? But looking into his eyes and seeing the sincerity there made me feel like it was right. Yes, I breathed. I'll marry you. Then, his expression shifted to something more serious. But there's something else we need to discuss. Some legal matters. The word legal hit me like a splash of ice water. Legal? Really, Michael? Is that necessary? He rushed to explain, taking my trembling hands in his. It's not that I don't trust you, Emma. It's just practical. As a lawyer, I've seen too many messy splits not to be cautious. Plus, it'll protect us both. What kind of protection are we talking about? I asked, a mix of curiosity and concern coloring my voice. He pulled out some documents from his briefcase. It's straightforward. If either of us cheats, the cheater loses their assets to the other. It's simple and fair. You know I would never cheat on you, Emma. This is just a safety net. I took a deep breath, trying to wrap my head around it all. The romantic proposal suddenly tangled with talk of cheating and assets wasn't what I had envisioned for my engagement. But maybe life with Michael wouldn't be ordinary, and perhaps this was just part of that. I glanced at the papers and then back at him, sensing his earnestness. All right, I'll think about it, but let me be clear, Michael. I have no intention of giving you a reason to use this against me. His relief was palpable. We celebrated that night, and despite the strange mix of emotions, the evening was perfect. The restaurant was cozy, the food delicious, and Michael was attentive, making me laugh and helping me forget about the legalities for a few hours. As we strolled back to the car beneath the stars, he stopped and pulled me close. You know I love you, right? No piece of paper is going to change that. I nodded, resting my head against his chest. I know, Michael. I love you too, I replied softly, but let's make sure this prenuptial agreement doesn't come between us, okay? He pressed a gentle kiss to the top of my head. It won't, I promise. A few days later, I signed the prenuptial agreement after reviewing it with my own lawyer, just to be sure. It felt strange to sign a document discussing the potential end of a marriage when ours hadn't even begun. But life is a gamble, and I was all in. I just hoped my bet on Michael would pay off. We were the couple everyone envied, always laughing and whispering to each other at parties. But after a few months, I sensed something shifting. At first, it was subtle, just a chill that settled over us, but soon enough, real trouble emerged. One afternoon, while shopping for new scents at a perfume store, I struck up a casual conversation with a sales associate about fragrances. When we left the store, Michael was fuming. Who was that? He barked as soon as we were clear of the crowded mall. I was taken aback. The sales guy. I was just asking about the perfumes. Why did it seem like you were really into him? Michael shot back, his eyes narrowing. I stared at him in disbelief. Michael, I was talking about perfumes. What's gotten into you? He scoffed, shaking his head and turning to walk away. Nothing. Forget it. Let's just go home. But it didn't end there. It only escalated. From that moment on, whenever I spoke to another man, Michael would sulk or make snide remarks. He became distant, retreating behind his laptop or phone and leaving me to eat dinner alone most nights. One evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I found him in his study, staring blankly at a spreadsheet. Michael, we need to talk, I said, standing in the doorway. He didn't look up. It's about us, about how you've been acting lately. I walked over to shut his laptop. You've been distant, and every time I interact with another guy, you act like I've committed some crime. He rubbed his temples and sighed heavily. Emma, you don't understand the pressure I'm under at work. When I see you laughing and chatting with other men, it just gets to me. Sometimes it feels like you don't respect our relationship enough to keep your distance. We stared at each other, the air thick with unspoken words and the remnants of our raised voices. Then the rumors started creeping in. Friends began whispering that Michael had been telling people I was a flirt, chatting up other men whenever he turned his back. I couldn't believe it. You've been talking about me behind my back? I demanded, telling people I flirt with other guys. Look, Emma, it's not like that. I might have said a few things, but it's only because I see how they look at you, he replied, defensive. I cut him off, my anger boiling over. I don't believe this. You have no right to spread lies about me. You're supposed to be my partner, not my biggest critic. After that blow-up, things between us cooled down. One morning, I found a note from Michael on the kitchen counter. His handwriting, usually neat and precise, looked rushed this time. I picked up the note, my heart racing a bit faster than usual. Emma, let's try to start over. Meet me at the Grand View Hotel, room 204, at 8:00 p.m. tonight. Let's put the past behind us and move forward. I stared at the note for a full minute, taken aback. This was unexpected. Maybe it was his way of reaching out, trying to mend what had been broken. Hope fluttered in my chest like a fragile bird, and I decided to go. The day dragged on, and work felt like a blur. I couldn't focus on customer orders or inventory. My mind kept drifting back to the note and what the evening might hold. Could we really start fresh? By the time I closed up the shop and headed to the hotel, I was a bundle of nerves. Arriving at the Grand View, my palms were sweaty. I checked my reflection in the car mirror, fixing my hair and dabbing on a bit of lipstick. Not too much. I didn't want to seem like I was trying too hard. Room 204 was on the second floor. The hallway was quiet, just the soft hum of the air conditioning. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, then hesitantly turned the doorknob. It was unlocked. The room was dimly lit by a bedside lamp, casting long shadows across the bed. An open bottle of wine sat on the table, 2 glasses beside it, and a small plate of sliced fruit. But there was no sign of Michael. Michael, I called out as I stepped inside, letting the door click shut behind me. Silence enveloped me, broken only by the soft whir of the air conditioner. I considered leaving, but something made me stay. I poured myself a glass of wine, the deep red liquid swirling in the glass. Just one glass, I muttered to myself, hoping to calm my nerves. I took a sip. The wine was rich and slightly too sweet. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my mind racing. The wine began to make my head feel a little fuzzy, or was that just my nerves? I lay back to rest my eyes for a moment, the room spinning gently before everything faded to black. When I finally woke up, it was dark outside. I tried to sit up, but a pounding headache made it difficult, and my thoughts were foggy. My phone lay on the nightstand, and I grabbed it. The light from the screen was blinding in the dim room. I checked the time. It was past midnight. Panic clawed at my chest as I struggled to remember what had happened and how I ended up lying there. But it felt like grasping at smoke. I jolted awake, suddenly aware that I was lying there without any clothes. Panic surged through me as I fumbled to dial Michael's number, my fingers trembling. When he picked up, his voice was cold and distant. "Emma, what's up?" "Michael, where are you? Why didn't you come to the hotel?" My voice shook with a mix of anxiety and frustration. "Hotel? What are you talking about? Emma, are you drunk? Have you lost your mind? I'm at the Grand View, like you told me. Why did you ask me to come here if you weren't going to show up?" My anger flared, drowning out my confusion. "Emma, I don't know what sick game you're playing, but I didn't write any note. I've been home all night. You're out of control, running around with your lovers." As I drove home from that disastrous night, Michael's cold, dismissive voice replayed in my head, leaving me in a state of turmoil. It felt like I was trapped in a nightmare from which I couldn't wake. Pulling into the driveway, the familiar sights of our home offered no comfort. Instead, they twisted into a knot of dread in my stomach. I stepped inside, and the tension hit me like a wave. Michael was pacing the living room, his face twisted in anger. As soon as he saw me, he exploded. "There you are, the wandering wife returns," he yelled, his voice dripping with scorn. "Michael, please, we need to talk. Something very wrong happened tonight," I pleaded, my voice shaky yet desperate to make him understand. But he wouldn't listen. Instead, he slammed a stack of photos on the table. "Explain these," he shouted. I picked up the photos, my hands trembling. They showed me in a hotel room, in bed with a man I'd never seen before. My heart sank. "Michael, I don't know who this is. I swear I've never seen him before. Something happened to me tonight, something I can't explain." He laughed, a harsh, mocking sound that sent shivers down my spine. "A monstrous mistake or just your monstrous behavior? Marrying you was the real mistake." Tears stung my eyes, but I fought them back, desperate to stay strong and clear-headed. "I didn't do this, Michael. You have to believe me." "Believe you? Why should I? You're a liar and a cheat, and I'll make sure you don't get a cent from me. I'm going to court, and I will take everything from you, just like we agreed." He spat out the words before grabbing his suitcase, already packed, and heading for the door. With a final glare, he slammed the door behind him, leaving me alone in the echoing silence of the house. I collapsed onto the couch, my body shaking. The pain in my head throbbed relentlessly, an intensity that made it hard to think. But it was more than just a headache. It felt as if my brain were shrouded in fog, my memories of the night blurred and inconsistent. That's when it hit me, the wine. I had only had one glass, but the dizziness and blackout didn't add up. It was too extreme, too sudden. I grabbed my phone and dialed my friend Lisa, a nurse, hoping she could help explain my symptoms. "Lisa, something's not right." I had a glass of wine, and then everything went black. I woke up hours later, and now Michael has these photos. It doesn't add up. My words tumbled out in a rush. There was a pause on the other end as Lisa processed what I said. "Emma, it sounds like you might have been drugged. You need to get to a hospital or a lab and get tested right now. Tell them what happened, especially about the wine and your symptoms." The drive to the lab felt like a blur as my thoughts raced, desperately trying to piece everything together. Once there, I explained the situation to the technician, who nodded solemnly and took several vials of blood. A couple of days later, I heard a heavy thud at my doorstep. It was a letter from Michael. My hands shook as I tore it open, confirming my worst fears in the cold, formal language of the legal notice. Michael was suing me for infidelity, aiming to strip me of everything I owned based on our prenuptial agreement. The trial was set for a month from now. I called my lawyer, Paul, immediately. His voice offered a small comfort amid the chaos. "Emma, come to my office. We need to strategize." As I drove to his office, my mind raced through every possible scenario, except the one where I emerged unscathed. Upon arriving, I noticed a familiar figure, Michael, walking alongside a young man, the same one from the photos. Without thinking, I grabbed my phone and started recording. I caught them exchanging an envelope, which the young man quickly tucked into his jacket. My heart raced as I realized the significance of what I might have just captured. At Paul's office, I showed him the video. His eyebrows shot up as he watched the exchange. "This is good, Emma. It looks very suspicious. I think it's time we brought in a private investigator." Paul's friend, Jack, a seasoned private investigator, took the case. He moved quickly, tailing the young actor and digging into his background. A few days later, Jack called us into his office with news. "I spoke to the kid," he began, his expression serious. "He's a bit of an actor, down on his luck. Your husband hired him to play a part, the part of your lover. He also confessed that your husband planned everything, even the drugged wine." As we were talking, my phone pinged with an email. My blood test results had arrived. I opened the attachment, my breath catching as I read the findings. Positive for a potent sedative. Just as Jack had said. I passed my phone to Paul, who read the results and looked up, his eyes hardening with resolve. "This is it, Emma. This is what we need. With this evidence, we can not only defend you, but also turn the tables on Michael." Paul advised me to keep everything under wraps until the court date. "Let's not tip him off. We'll hit him with this in court and give him the surprise of his life." A week had passed since the hotel debacle, and I was back in the familiar confines of my lingerie store, trying to distract myself from the looming court date. It was an ordinary afternoon until Michael walked in, a woman on his arm. "Emma, meet Leela, my bride-to-be," he announced, pride in his voice that didn't quite reach his eyes. Leela looked young, too young perhaps to grasp the type of man she was dealing with. She glanced at me with a mix of curiosity and judgment. Michael wasted no time stirring up trouble. "Take a good look around, Emma. Soon enough, all this will be mine." His arm swept dramatically across the expanse of my store, a smirk playing on his lips. Leela's eyes followed his gesture, her expression hardening with newfound conviction. I wanted to reach out and warn her, but I recalled Paul's strict instructions to remain silent until the hearing. All I could manage was a thin smile, responding with as much dignity as I could muster. "We'll see what the judge has to say about that, Michael." The day of the court session arrived all too quickly. The courtroom felt austere, the air thick with tension. Michael, ever the lawyer, had chosen to represent himself. He stood before us, adjusting his tie, a clear display of self-assurance, as he prepared to deliver his opening statement. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady and clear. "Today, you will see the true colors of a woman who not only broke the vows of marriage, but sought to destroy the sanctity of our home with her deceit." He gestured dramatically to the evidence displayed on the screen behind him. My wife, Emma, was not the faithful partner she promised to be. Photos from the hotel room flashed on the screen, eliciting murmurs from the courtroom. For months, I lived in torment, suspecting her infidelities, and finally, as these pictures show, my worst fears were confirmed. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle as he walked closer to where I sat, his eyes locking onto mine. "Emma here would have you believe she's a victim, innocent and caught in circumstances beyond her control." His tone was scathing, his words rehearsed yet effective. "But I tell you, she is not a victim. She is a perpetrator, a destroyer of our union." As he spoke, I noted the calculated pauses and measured glances at the judge, the way he constructed each sentence with the precision of a seasoned attorney. "The evidence is clear, undeniable. Emma's actions have caused irreparable damage, not just to her marriage but to the very fabric of trust that binds any relationship." His speech crescendoed in a dramatic plea for justice. Paul, my lawyer, rose to address the court with calm authority, his briefcase filled with the evidence that would clear my name. "Your Honor," he began, his voice steady and commanding, "today we not only defend Emma Clark's honor, but also reveal a pattern of deceit orchestrated by her husband, Michael Clark." He gestured to the back of the courtroom, and the actor Michael had hired entered, causing a stir among the spectators. Paul asked him to share his involvement, and the young man looked nervously around before speaking. "I was hired to act a part. I thought it was just a prank," he admitted, his voice shaky. "I didn't realize the seriousness of what was being orchestrated." Paul nodded gravely, then presented the blood test results to the court. These results show that Emma was incapacitated against her will, drugged by substances she had no knowledge of consuming. The courtroom murmured as the implications sank in. Furthermore, Paul continued, his tone hardening, "This is not the first time Mr. Clark has employed such tactics." He laid out evidence of Michael's previous marriages, detailing how similar patterns had led to his unjust enrichment at the expense of his former wives. As Paul concluded his arguments, the weight of the evidence was palpable. We asked not only for the dismissal of the fraudulent claims made against Emma, but also for just compensation for the ordeal she has endured. The judge nodded, absorbing everything before delivering her verdict. After careful consideration of the evidence presented, I find in favor of Emma Clark. The prenuptial agreement is hereby annulled. Relief washed over me, and tears pricked my eyes, not just from the victory, but from the vindication. Furthermore, the judge added, the court awards Mrs. Clark damages in the amount of $400,000. Michael's face turned ashen, his future crumbling before him. His fiancée, present in the courtroom, hurried out, only to return briefly to whisper a thank you to me for exposing the truth before leaving him for good. News of the trial spread like wildfire, the sensational details making headlines. Michael's professional reputation was irrevocably damaged. He was stripped of his license to practice law. The revelation prompted his ex-wives to file lawsuits against him, uncovering a trail of deceit that left him financially and socially bankrupt. As I closed up shop one evening, the glow of the sunset casting long shadows on the floor, I reflected on the journey. The battle had been hard-fought, marked by moments of despair and indignity, but ultimately it stood as a testament to resilience and justice. Life has a peculiar way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. That's how I met Marco. My name is Cora, and at 28, I was working as a fitness trainer at a local gym, living a life as structured and disciplined as my workout routines. Then one day, Marco walked in, looking for a quick session, and ended up changing the entire course of my life. "Hey, I'm Marco," he said, flashing a smile that could light up the darkest corners. "Heard this is the best place to get in shape. Mind showing me the ropes?" I raised an eyebrow, sizing him up. He didn't exactly fit the mold of the usual gym goer, more like someone who spent his days charming his way through life. "Sure, Marco. Follow my lead, and you'll be in shape in no time. But I warn you, I don't go easy on anyone." He chuckled, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Wouldn't have it any other way. Lead on, Cora." Training Marco was like trying to tame a wild stallion. He had energy for days and a stubborn streak to match. But beneath the jokes and playful banter, there was a genuine connection neither of us could deny. As days turned into weeks, our gym sessions became the highlight of my life. It wasn't just about the workouts anymore. It was about the laughter, the stories, and the moments we shared. One evening, as we wrapped up, Marco turned to me, his usual grin replaced by a serious look. "Cora, I need to tell you something. I'm not just here for the workouts. I'm here for you. You have this fire, this strength I've never seen in anyone else, and I'm crazy about you." I was taken aback. This was Marco, the guy who joked about everything, now standing in front of me, bare and honest. "Marco, I don't know what to say. You're not what I expected, but I can't deny there's something between us. Something real." That was the start of our whirlwind romance, intense and passionate, like a storm that swept everything in its path. Before I knew it, I was saying "I do" to the man who had walked into my gym and turned my world upside down. But the fairy tale didn't last long. After the wedding, Marco dropped a bombshell that would set the stage for the battles to come. "Cora, we need to move into my mother's house. Family is everything to me, and I need to be there for them." My stomach dropped. Maria, his mother, was a force to be reckoned with, sharp-tongued and critical, a stark contrast to Marco's warmth. And then there was Sofia, his sister, a mirror image of her mother's arrogance and disdain. "Marco, are you sure about this? Our relationship with your mother and Sofia is strained, to put it mildly. Is this really the best idea?" I asked, trying to keep the worry out of my voice. He took my hands in his gaze earnest. "I know it's not ideal, but family means everything to me. We'll make it work, I promise. It's me and our little family against the world." Moving into Marco's family home felt like stepping onto a battlefield. Every day was a struggle under Maria's strict rules. "Don't forget the dishes need doing, and the living room needs a good dusting. We run a tight ship here," she would say, her voice dripping with anything but warmth. I would nod, biting back the retorts that threatened to spill. "Of course, Maria. I wouldn't want the house to be anything less than perfect." Sofia would smirk from her perch at the kitchen table, her eyes scanning me like I was some bug under a microscope. "Yeah, Cora, and try to keep up. Will you? We don't need any dead weight around here. The days felt long, the work unending. It was like living in a loop, each day a repeat of the last. Cleaning, cooking, trying to find my footing in a house that felt like a minefield. Marco was there, but not really. His restaurant was his world, and I felt like a ghost in his family home. Then, life threw me another curveball. I was pregnant. The news should have been a beacon of joy, but in Maria's house, it was just another ripple in already troubled waters. Pregnant, huh? Maria's voice was flat, her eyes hard. Well, don't expect any special treatment. This house doesn't run itself, you know. I placed my hand instinctively on my belly. I don't expect special treatment, Maria, but I do expect some understanding. I'm carrying a child, your grandchild. That shut her up, if only for a moment. But the chores piled up and the glares grew sharper, making the house feel smaller each day. Sophia was no help, watching my struggles with a satisfied smirk. You're slowing down, Cora, she would taunt. Can't handle a bit of housework. What kind of mother are you going to be? I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I held it in for Marco, for the tiny heartbeat grew stronger each day. The tension was a constant companion, an unwelcome guest at every meal and every moment. Marco, please talk to them, I pleaded one night, the weight of the day heavy on my shoulders. Your mother and Sophia treat me like I'm nothing, like I don't belong. He sighed, a tired sound that spoke volumes. Cora, they're just set in their ways. It's how they've always been. Just give it time, it'll get better. But it didn't get better, it got harder. The house became more suffocating, Maria and Sophia more relentless. I was just trying to keep my head above water and protect the tiny life that depended on me. Each night, as I lay in bed, the moon casting shadows across the room, I felt the weight of my reality pressing down, heavier than ever. I made a silent vow. I wouldn't let them break me. Their disdain and sharp words wouldn't define me. I was stronger than they realized, and one day they'd see, this house, this battlefield, would be mine to conquer. Becoming a mother was supposed to be the most beautiful chapter of my life. But in Maria's house, it felt more like a trial by fire. Luca was my little bundle of joy, my ray of sunshine amid the storm. Yet every coo and every cry was met with relentless pressure and criticism from Maria and Sophia. Really, Cora, can't you keep that child quiet? Maria snapped, her tone sharp as knives, every time Luca whimpered. I held him closer, whispering words of comfort, trying to shield him from his grandmother's harshness. He's just a baby, Maria. Babies cry, that's how they communicate. Sophia rolled her eyes, her voice dripping with disdain. Oh please, you're just not doing it right, Cora. Maybe if you paid more attention to him instead of feeling sorry for yourself, he'd be quieter. Their words stung, each one a reminder of how out of place I felt in this house and this family. It wasn't just the verbal jabs, it was the scrutinizing looks, especially after my body had changed during pregnancy. The weight I'd gained became a favorite topic of ridicule. Looks like those fitness trainer days are long gone, huh, Cora? Maria would chuckle, her smirk infuriating. Better lay off the sweets if you want to fit into your old clothes again. I clenched my fists, forcing a smile to hide my hurt. I'm proud of my body, Maria. It brought Luca into this world. The weight is temporary, but the love I have for my son is forever. But my defiance fell on deaf ears. I was the outsider, the intruder in their perfect little world. And no matter how hard I tried, it never seemed to be enough. Enough was enough. The constant belittling from Maria and Sophia wasn't just chipping away at my spirit. It was igniting a fire within me, a fire to reclaim my life, my body, and my self-respect. I decided to take control right there in the suffocating walls of that house. I started small, turning the corner of my room into a personal gym. It wasn't much, just a mat, some weights, and a determination as strong as steel. This is it, Luca, I whispered, cradling him in one arm while setting up my phone to record. Mommy's turning it all around, starting now. The first few days were tough. The exercises left me breathless, my muscles screaming in protest. But each drop of sweat and every aching limb felt like a triumph. You think you can just bounce back, Cora? Maria sneered one day, watching me pant through my routine. It's not that easy, you know. Takes more than a few stretches to fix what's broken. I wiped my brow, fixing her with a steely gaze. Watch me, Maria. I'm not just fixing what's broken. I'm building something stronger. I don't need your approval or your snide comments. That's when I decided to go public with my journey. I started a YouTube channel and an Instagram page sharing every struggle and every victory. It was raw and real, and to my surprise, it resonated with so many out there. "Look at this, Luca," I'd say, showing him the screen filled with comments and likes. "We're not alone. There are so many rooting for us." Then came the offers from advertisers, turning my little corner of the internet into a thriving source of income. I was stunned and overwhelmed. But above all, I felt empowered. "Can you believe this, Luca?" I whispered, tucking him into bed. "We're doing it. We're really doing it." But with every success, the tension in the house grew thicker. Maria and Sofia couldn't stand it, the way I turned their ridicule into armor, their disdain into a driving force. "What's this now, Cora? Playing the star while the rest of us do the real work?" Sofia spat one day, her eyes filled with venom. I stood my ground, Luca on my hip, my heart stronger than ever. "It's called turning the tide, Sofia. It's called taking back control. And if that bothers you, well, that's your problem, not mine." What once felt like a prison was now just a backdrop. My world was larger, brighter, filled with the love of my son and the support of a community that saw me for who I truly was. The success of my online channels was a sweet victory, but it brought a new kind of challenge. Marco was stunned by the numbers, the comments, the sheer scale of it all. But his pride was bruised. He didn't want the world, especially his family, to see the shift in our roles. "Cora, this is incredible," he said one evening, his eyes pleading. "But you know how my mother and Sofia are. Please, let's keep this between us. I don't want them thinking I'm not the provider." I sighed, the weight of his request heavy on my shoulders. "Marco, I'm proud of what I've achieved. It's not just about the money. It's about respect, about independence." He nodded, reaching for my hand. "I know, and I respect that. But in this house, it's complicated. Let's just keep it our little secret for now." Reluctantly, I agreed and began transferring $4,000 a month to Marco's account. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. Maria and Sofia continued their tirade, oblivious to the truth. They saw me as a leech, living off their precious son and brother. "You're just a freeloader, Cora, always taking and never contributing," Maria snarled, her words as sharp as ever. I held back my retort, using my silent shield against her barbs. "I contribute in my own way, Maria, not that you'd ever acknowledge it." Sofia was no better. "What do you even do all day, Cora? Lounge around while we do all the real work." Their ignorance was a bitter pill to swallow, but I swallowed it anyway. My focus was on Luca, my channels, my newfound strength. I'd walk with my son in the park, my camera constant companion, capturing moments, workouts, and the real me that they refused to see. "Cora, you're wasting your time with those videos," Maria scoffed, watching me edit my latest post. But the numbers told a different story. The subscribers, the views, the comments. They were real, tangible, and they were mine. Maybe to you, Maria, but to me and to thousands out there, it's anything but a waste, I replied, my confidence unwavering. Marco's restaurant troubles added another layer to our already complicated life. One day, he approached me, his pride barely holding back his desperation. "Cora, the restaurant is struggling. I need help. Could you? Would you lend me some money just to tide things over?" His vulnerability was a rare sight, tugging at my heartstrings. "Of course, Marco, I'll help. But this isn't just a loan. It's an investment in us, in our family." His relief was palpable, but it was tinged with the unspoken truth. I was the lifeline, the silent savior of the family facade. As I transferred $10,000, I watched the gratitude and guilt flicker in his eyes. I sensed the balance had shifted. Time in that house felt like a ticking bomb, with each day bringing us closer to an explosion. Sofia's marriage introduced her husband, Rick, into our already cramped space, and his presence only heightened the chaos and tension that had become a constant in our lives. "You two just take up space," Maria sneered, her words slicing through the crowded living room. "You're nothing but freeloaders, Cora, you and that kid." I clenched my teeth, hugging Luca closer. "We're family, Maria, or at least that's what a house like this is supposed to mean." But when Sofia announced her pregnancy, Maria's attitude shifted to something even harsher and more direct. "This house is getting crowded, Cora, and frankly, you and your boy are just in the way." The words stung, but before I could muster a response, Marco dropped a bombshell of his own at dinner. "I have to go out of town for a few weeks. Restaurant business," he said, avoiding my gaze. A few weeks in this madhouse without the slightest buffer Marco provided felt like a sentence I couldn't bear. "You're leaving now? With everything going on?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper over the lump in my throat. He didn't meet my eyes. I have to, Cora. It's important. And just like that, he was gone. The door shut behind him, and the weight of his absence settled over the house like a thick fog. I tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy for Luca. We went for walks, did our workouts in the park, anything to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the house. But when we returned from kindergarten one day, the sight that greeted us froze me in my tracks. Our belongings, bags, suitcases, Luca's toys, were piled outside the front door like trash. Mommy, what's happening? Luca's small voice trembled with confusion and fear. I swallowed hard, fighting back tears as I approached the door. Maria, Sofia. What is this? Why are things outside? I demanded, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. The response came cold and merciless from the other side of the door. You heard me, Cora. The house is too crowded, and you two are just taking up space. It's time for you to leave and find somewhere else to call home. Maria's voice was like a knife, and Sofia's echoing laughter twisted it deeper. I stood there, my whole world collapsing around me. What should I tell Marco? What would I say to my son when he asked where his father, his home had gone? Their laughter was the only answer, a cruel reminder that we were expendable. An inconvenience easily discarded. With a heavy heart and a mind swirling with shock and betrayal, I gathered our belongings. Holding Luca's hand tightly, I stepped away from the house that was never a home. The pain was sharp, the betrayal bitter, but it was the clarity of the moment that struck me most. This was the end of one chapter, a chapter of struggle and pain, but it was also the beginning of something new, something ours. I rented an apartment, a small but safe haven for Luca and me. As I unpacked our lives, the reality of what had happened and what I had escaped began to sink in. I was alone, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope, a sense of freedom. Settling into the new apartment was a bittersweet experience. It was a sanctuary where the shadows of Maria's house couldn't reach us. I meticulously arranged our belongings, trying to make the space feel like home when my phone buzzed with a message that sent shockwaves through my world. It was from Sofia, her message laced with sickening glee. You think you know Marco? Think again, Cora. Attached was a link, a portal to a truth I had never imagined. Trembling, I clicked it, my heart racing. I clicked the link, and my world fractured as the screen lit up with images that shattered my reality. There was Marco, not mired in restaurant troubles but tangled in the arms of another woman. Their intimacy was unmistakable, the photos standing in stark contrast to the lies he had spun for me. The most recent shots were dated just yesterday. The business trip, the stress, everything had been a cruel facade, and I was the unwitting financier of his double life. A numbing cold washed over me, the pain and betrayal intertwining into a fierce resolve. For years I had been the backbone, the silent supporter of a man who lived in shadows while his family treated me like dirt. A week of emotional turmoil was punctuated by incessant calls from Marco, whose voice had once been a source of comfort but was now a trigger for my contempt. Cora, please, you need to come back. Mom and Sofia crossed the line, and the restaurant is in shambles. I need you. The bills are piling up. His pleas, once capable of tugging at my heartstrings, now ignited nothing but disdain. So you only need me to pay your bills and your family's bills. His voice cracked, desperation seeping through. We're still a family, you, me, Luca. Isn't that worth fighting for? A bitter laugh escaped me. A family? Is that what you call this charade? No, Marco, we're far from a family. And as for your restaurant, your debts are yours to deal with. Silence fell heavily between us, almost tangible. I could feel the weight of his predicament pressing down on him. But Cora, the money? Your problem, Marco. Your restaurant, your money. I'm done being your lifeline. I cut in, my voice unwavering. However, we will discuss this tomorrow. I will come to your mother's house. I made my decision. I returned to that house, not as the broken woman they expected, but as the force they never saw coming. Armed with the truth and a plan that would turn their world upside down, I stepped into the lion's den. Marco's face lit up with a mix of hope and surprise, but Maria and Sofia's expressions were cold and calculating. They clearly weren't thrilled about my return. Look who's back, Maria said, her tone dripping with disdain. Missed us, have you? I met her gaze without flinching. Not at all, Maria. I'm here for something important. I handed Marco an envelope. His face drained of color as he recognized it for what it was. Divorce papers. Marco, I stated, relishing the taste of freedom, our marriage ends here. Maria and Sophia's initial shock quickly morphed into smiles. Finally getting rid of the dead weight and Marco, Sophia jeered, her laughter grating on my nerves. But their joy was premature. Don't get too excited, I interjected sharply. You might want to sit down for this. It's been me, not Marco, keeping this household afloat. The room fell silent, stunned. Marco's eyes darted between me and his family as the truth hung in the air. It's true, he admitted, his voice barely audible. The restaurant's been failing. Cora's been covering everything. She transferred $4,000 to me every month. Maria and Sophia turned on him, their faces twisted with anger and disbelief. You lied to us. You let her pay our bills. Maria's voice was shrill. What should we do now without her money? I'm going to file for alimony, Marco said, desperation clear in his tone. I earn less, so it's only fair. His mother and sister delighted in this revelation, clapping their hands as if they were celebrating a victory. Their hollow applause echoed in the room, but I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. You think that's going to work, Marco? You won't get a cent from me, especially not after I found out about your affair. The color drained from his face. How did you? He stammered, his bravado crumbling. I pointedly looked at Sophia. Your sister was kind enough to send me all the proof I needed. What erupted next was chaos, accusations flying as betrayals were laid bare. Marco and Sophia shouted at each other, arms flailing amid the frenzy. But I remained calm, my next move crystal clear. I'm taking back what's mine, I declared, my voice cutting through the noise. Every appliance, every piece of furniture I paid for. You're left with what you've earned, which is nothing. And that's exactly what I did. I stripped the house of every trace of my financial support, leaving them to face the consequences of their actions. Their pleas for mercy and forgiveness fell on deaf ears as I blocked their numbers, severing the last ties to a life of deceit and disrespect. The fallout was swift. Marco's restaurant crumbled under the weight of debt. The house was lost, and Sophia's husband walked away from the wreckage of their family. They were left with nothing but each other and the mistakes they had made, crammed into a rented apartment. As for Luca and me, we flourished in our new life. Our days were filled with love, laughter, and the peace we had fought so hard to find. The past was behind us, a distant memory overshadowed by the bright future we were building together. We were more than survivors. We were conquerors, and our story was just beginning. My life is pretty straightforward. I'm all about fitness, health, and apparently, drama. At 26, I'm juggling my career as a fitness trainer and managing my health blog. That's where I met Mark at the sports center. What began as a casual connection quickly blossomed into something special. He has this vibe that's hard to ignore, and before we knew it, we were caught up in what you might call whirlwind romance. Let me set the scene for you. It was a scorching summer day, and I was about to meet Mark's family for the first time. I felt a mix of nerves and excitement, dressed in a simple knee-length dress with short sleeves. Nothing flashy, but apparently enough to stir the pot. Mark had warned me that his family was a bit traditional and protective. He mentioned his mom, Linda, in a tone that left me puzzled. She has strong opinions, but don't take it to heart, he said, oblivious to the fact that those were more like red flags than reassurances. As we stepped into their family home, Mark's younger brother, Alex, greeted us with a hearty smile. Then came Linda. The atmosphere shifted dramatically. It felt like the temperature dropped a few degrees. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe, lingering on my arms. Is this how you dress to meet your future mother-in-law? She asked, her voice icy. A bit bold, don't you think? I was taken aback, scrambling for the right words. Mark squeezed my hand, a silent show of support. Well, it's summer, and it's pretty hot outside. I thought this outfit was decent and comfortable, I managed to say. Comfortable or not, it's about first impressions, Linda shot back. I would have expected something more appropriate. Mark jumped in to smooth things over. Mom, it's really hot today. Erica looks fine, let's not start off on the wrong foot. But Linda wouldn't let it go. I'm just saying, Mark, it's about respect. But fine, let's have dinner. Dinner turned into a tense affair, the conversations around me feeling superficial while Linda's earlier remarks loomed overhead like a dark cloud. Alex tried to lighten the mood with jokes and stories, and I was grateful for his effort. Mark kept giving me reassuring looks, but I could sense the damage was done. After dinner, while I was helping with the dishes, Linda cornered me in the kitchen. "Listen, dear, I'm just looking out for my son. He's a good boy, and I don't want him to make a mistake." I was floored. "A mistake? Linda, I love Mark. I'm not here to play games. I don't know what gave you a bad impression, but that's not me." She shook her head. "We'll see. Time tells all truths." The ride home was quiet, and Mark apologized for his mom's behavior, though I could tell he was upset too. "She can be protective, but this is too much." I sighed and leaned back in the seat. "It's okay, Mark, but if this is how it's going to be, we have a rocky road ahead." As wedding planning began in earnest, Mark and I were all in, picking out decorations, tasting cakes, and finding the perfect attire. I fell in love with a stunning dress, sleek and just a bit revealing, but nothing outrageous, or so I thought until Linda caught a glimpse. "You plan on wearing that in front of the whole family?" she blurted out. "It looks like you're aiming for a beach party rather than a wedding." I tried to laugh it off. "It's just modern, Linda. Plus, it'll be a warm day, and I want to feel comfortable." Mark squeezed my hand, a signal to avoid a battle we couldn't win, but Linda's frown said it all. She muttered something about tradition and decency as she walked off. I thought, if a dress could stir the pot, what lay ahead? After that initial clash with Linda, things settled into a tense routine. I threw myself into work and my blog, which became my sanctuary, my space where I felt in control and could share my passion for fitness and health. It never crossed my mind that this very passion would stir the pot once again. One evening, Mark and I were lounging on the couch during a rare moment of downtime when he suddenly frowned, scrolling through his phone. "Babe, we need to talk," he said, his tone serious. I sat up, alarmed. "What's up?" He handed me his phone, revealing my Instagram profile. In the comments of my latest post were a mix of supportive and flirty messages. Totally normal, in my opinion. Okay, I was confused. "It's just Instagram, Mark. People comment. That's how it works." "Yeah, but my mom is making a big deal out of it," he replied, frustration creeping into his voice. "She's convinced you're inviting attention." Anger surged through me. "Are you kidding me? It's Instagram, for crying out loud." I snatched the phone from him and scrolled through the comments. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, yet Linda had twisted it into something sordid. "So what am I supposed to do? Police who comments on my posts?" I shot back. "No, of course not, but maybe we could limit who can comment until this blows over." His suggestion was well-meaning but infuriating. "So, I have to censor my account because your mom has a twisted view of me?" Hell no, that's not happening. Fast forward through the Instagram saga, where Linda twisted my every move into scandal. Things got stickier when Alex, bless him, began giving me rides home from work since his office was just a block from the gym. It was innocent convenience, but not in Linda's eyes. During a family dinner, with tension thick in the air, she leaned in with her usual insinuations. "Nice of Alex to play chauffeur, isn't it?" Mark's jaw tensed, and I noticed Alex stiffen beside him. "Mom, what are you implying?" Mark's voice had that warning edge, but Linda was on a roll. "Oh, nothing. Just making conversation," she replied, feigning innocence while her eyes darted between me and Alex. The atmosphere was like a lit fuse. "Stop it, Mom. You're out of line," Alex snapped, clearly at his limit. The argument escalated from there, with Mark caught in the middle, torn between his brother and his mother's accusations. The drive home was silent, the weight of the accusations heavy in the air. I couldn't believe Linda would stoop so low, using Alex's kindness as a weapon against me. The entire mess with Linda reached a boiling point, and I could only wonder how we would navigate the storm ahead. I never imagined it would come to this, but after Linda's latest stunt, accusing me of cheating because Alex offered me a few rides home, I hit my breaking point. I told Mark outright, "Your mom is not welcome in our house anymore. I can't take this anymore. She's crossed too many lines." "You think I had declared war?" Linda erupted when she heard about the ban, but honestly, I was beyond caring. Her constant digs and accusations were one thing, but what happened next was a real gut punch. A couple of months later, I found out I was pregnant. What should have been a joyous revelation turned to chaos when Linda decided to spin a new tale. She told Mark, "How do you know that child is yours? With all those men at her gym, who knows?" Hearing that venom come from his own mother felt like a knife in my gut. I could see the doubt creep into Mark's eyes, a look that shattered the solid bond we once shared. One night, after overhearing yet another of their phone calls, I confronted Mark. So what? You think I'm cheating? That this baby isn't yours? My voice was sharp, tinged with hurt and anger. Mark looked torn, a shadow of himself. I don't know what to think anymore, Erica. My mom has all these ideas. And you're going to take her word over mine? Over everything we've built together? I interrupted, disbelief coloring my tone. He didn't answer, shuffling his feet and avoiding my gaze. That silence spoke volumes more than any argument could. Things grew colder between us after that. Conversations became clipped and filled with tension. It was like living with a stranger. The joy of our upcoming baby was overshadowed by this cloud of suspicion and doubt. When our baby boy finally arrived, with his fair hair and bright blue eyes, I thought maybe things would start to look up. But I couldn't have been more wrong. As he grew, his features became even more pronounced, making him the spitting image of a golden-haired angel. The problem? Mark, my husband, was as brunette and dark-eyed as they come, giving Linda even more ammunition for her relentless accusations. In a last-ditch effort to quell the ridiculousness, I dug up old childhood photos to show both Linda and Mark. Look, I said, pointing to a picture of me at 5, blonde and blue-eyed just like our son. It's genetics, Linda. Can't you see the resemblance? But Linda merely sniffed, unimpressed, her eyes narrowing. Convenient, isn't it, that your genes decided to pop up now? And Alex being blonde doesn't help your case. Mark stood there, caught in the middle, his face a mix of confusion and hurt. The tension was unbearable. Things reached a breaking point at our son's first birthday party. With all the guests cooing over the baby, Linda couldn't help but make a scene. This child looks nothing like my son. Everyone can see it. We need a DNA test to prove who the father really is, she announced loudly, making everyone uncomfortable. I was livid, my face burning with embarrassment and anger. Are you out of your mind, Linda? Accusing me in front of everyone? No way am I doing some tests just because your paranoia has gone off the rails. My voice dripped with indignation. It was humiliating to be accused like that, especially in front of friends and family. But then Mark intervened, just not in the way I had hoped. Actually, we're doing it, he said, his voice cold, a hardness in his eyes that I had never seen before. If you've got nothing to hide, then there's no issue. We'll do the test, or we're done. I can't be married to someone I don't trust. I was floored. Are you serious? You're choosing your mom's crazy accusations over me, over your son. He didn't budge, not even flinching at my words. It's not just my mom. There's too much doubt, too much talk. The test will clear things up one way or another, and until then. My heart was in my throat, dreading his next words. Pack your bags. Stay somewhere else. I can't look at you. Not now, not with these doubts. His words cut through me, leaving a chilling emptiness in their wake. So there I was, packing my things in a rage, my hands shaking with a mix of fury and hurt. Our baby boy, blissfully unaware, watched with wide, innocent eyes as his world, and mine, crumbled. I left, heading to the only place I could think of, my mom's. She was waiting with open arms. When I arrived at my mom's house, I barely made it through the door before I broke down. He kicked us out, Mom, over some DNA tests. Linda convinced him we need it. My mother's fury flared instantly. I'll go over there and give Mark a piece of my mind, over my dead body. But I stopped her. No, it's not worth it. Not right now. That night, I replayed every moment in my mind, trying to pinpoint where it all went wrong. How had we gone from being so in love to questioning our baby's paternity, and Alex caught up in this mess for no reason other than Linda's spite? The fallout from my son's first birthday party had been swift. News of Linda's accusations spread like wildfire, and it felt as if the entire city was whispering behind my back before the party favors were even picked up. My friends, my mom's friends, even the neighbors who had watched me grow up, they were all talking. It felt like I was living in a nightmare. Fed up and desperate to clear my name, I decided to go through with the DNA test. I picked up the phone and called Mark, my voice steady despite my trembling hands. I'll do the test. I cut straight to the chase. There was a pause on the other end. Then Mark replied, his voice unnervingly calm. I knew you'd come around. It's for the best. When I arrived at the clinic, I was a bundle of nerves. Mark looked like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, and to my surprise, so was Alex. Why is he here? I asked, my voice edged with irritation as I nodded toward my brother. Mark didn't meet my gaze. There's been talk that you and Alex, he's getting tested too. My blood boiled at the implication. You think I'd cheat on you with your brother? That's how little you trust me." Before Mark could respond, the specialist called us in, momentarily breaking the tension. Inside, the specialist laid it out clearly. Determining paternity could get complicated when potential fathers were siblings. "We'll need additional samples from everyone involved, including you, Erica, to ensure accuracy." So we each gave our samples, lost in our thoughts. Alex looked mortified, Mark appeared conflicted, and me, I was just angry. Angry that it had come to this, angry at Linda, and angry at Mark for allowing his mother's paranoia to escalate so far. Once the tests were done, we were told it would be a couple of weeks before we got the results. Those weeks dragged on, each day a torturous reminder of the uncertainty looming over our future. I didn't sit idle though. I made a few calls and spoke to a man who promised he could help with a delicate matter. I didn't know if it would lead anywhere, but I had to try something. Finally, the day arrived for the grand reveal. The tension in Linda's living room felt almost tangible, wrapping its icy fingers around my heart. My son clutched my hand, sensing the storm brewing but oblivious to its cause. Ever the self-appointed master of ceremonies, Linda dramatically sliced open the envelope containing the DNA test results, her anticipation palpable as she hoped for a scandal that would validate her accusations. But the moment she peeked inside, her expression faltered and disappointment washed over her. "The father is Mark," she announced, her voice losing its usual sharpness. Mark, who had been a bundle of nerves, visibly relaxed, a smug smile spreading across his face as he turned to me. "Well, there you have it. No harm done, right? You can come back home now." His words ignited a fierce mix of disbelief and anger within me, and I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. "Come back after all this? You must be joking." He blinked, taken aback by my reaction. "But you're innocent, Erica. Isn't that what you wanted?" That's when I played my hand, pulling out the divorce papers I had kept hidden away. The silence that followed was deafening as I laid them on the table. Mark's face went from confident to pale, sheer panic taking over. "What's this? Why divorce papers?" I replied, the words tasting like freedom, and then I produced the photos, undeniable proof of Mark's infidelity captured in vivid detail by the private detective I had secretly hired. Watching him transform from confident to broken was almost pitiful. He started to babble apologies, his earlier bravado crumbling away. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Please let's talk about this." "Talk?" I scoffed, my voice cold. "You dragged my name through the mud and let your mother accuse me of the worst. All the while, you were the one cheating. There's nothing to talk about." Linda, who had been relishing the drama, now tried to intervene, her earlier eagerness replaced by desperation. "Now, dear, let's all calm down. We can fix this." "Fix this?" I cut her off sharply. "Your son is a cheat, and you're no better for stirring this trouble based on lies." After I laid out the proof of Mark's betrayal for all to see, the room became a battleground of broken bonds and shattered illusions. Linda couldn't tear her eyes away from the photos spread across the coffee table, each one a testament to betrayal. "I'm not just walking away, Mark. I will be demanding alimony and compensation for this treachery," I declared, my voice steady yet seething with anger. Mark's face drained of color, his earlier bravado evaporating into thin air. "You can't be serious," he stammered, looking from the photos to his mother, searching for some kind of refuge. Linda, ever the matriarch, attempted to regain control. "Oh please, she was never right for you. She would have cheated on you sooner or later. You're better off without her." That's when Alex, who had been simmering quietly with rage, exploded. "Enough." His voice echoed off the walls. "I'm done with all of this, with both of you." He pointed at his mother and brother. "After everything you put her through based on nothing but your twisted suspicions, I'm out." Linda turned to him, her face a mask of shock and desperation. "Alex, please don't say that. I was just trying to protect our family." "Protect?" he scoffed, his scorn palpable. "Is that what you call this? Destroying relationships and spreading lies? I can't be part of this family if this is what it stands for. I'm moving to another city and starting fresh, away from all this madness." Later, as I relayed the events to my mom, her words provided a cold comfort. That's the price of Linda's folly. Her arrogance and stupidity cost her her own sons. Maybe now she'll see the harm she's caused. The fallout was immediate and absolute. Alex followed through on his promise, moving away and cutting ties. Mark was left to face the consequences of his actions, with his mother's manipulations creating a chasm too wide to bridge between them. Life after the dust settled was different, not easier, but clearer, like I was seeing everything for the first time again. My mom and I had many long talks about it, sitting on her old comfy sofa with cups of tea that always seemed to go cold before we finished. "Mom," I started one evening, the sky outside painted with calm I didn't quite feel inside. "Do you think I made the right choice with everything? The divorce? Standing up to Linda and Mark like that?" My mom set her cup down, looking at me with those wise eyes that had seen more of life than I ever wished to. "Darling, you did what you had to do. You stood up for yourself, for your dignity. That's more important than staying in a marriage built on distrust." The biggest change, besides the obvious, was Alex's departure. He called me once just before leaving. "I can't stay here, not after everything. I need to start fresh somewhere where every corner doesn't remind me of all this." "I understand," I said. "You'll always have a friend in me, Alex. You were the only one who really saw me through this mess." He chuckled, the sound holding a shadow of our shared troubles. "You take care of yourself, all right?" After hanging up, I felt a pang of loss, not just for the relationship I thought I had with Mark, but for the family I thought I belonged to. Months passed and life found a new rhythm. My blog started gaining traction, becoming a space where I could share not just fitness and health tips, but also personal stories of resilience and starting over. It resonated with people more than I expected. As I settled into this new chapter of my life, finding solace in the routine I'd built for me and my son, my phone rang out of the blue one afternoon. The screen flashed a name I hadn't seen in a while: Linda. My initial instinct was to ignore it, let it go to voicemail, but something, maybe curiosity or a desire to finally put it all to rest, made me answer. "Hello." Her voice came through shaky and laced with regret. "Erica, I was wondering, could I see him? My grandson." The audacity of her request stopped me cold. I was transported back to that living room, feeling the weight of her accusations all over again. "You've got some nerve, Linda," I said, my voice steady but firm. "After all the hell you put us through, now you want to play grandma? You didn't even want to see him before." She started to cry, mumbling apologies between sobs, trying to explain herself. But I wasn't having any of it. "Save your tears, Linda. It's too late for sorry. But please, I just want to make things right," she pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. I sighed, a deep, weary sigh. "You should have thought of that before you made your bed. Now you get to lie in it alone." Without waiting for her response, I hung up. The finality of the click echoed through me. It was harsh, but necessary. A line had been drawn, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was in control of where things were headed. Looking at my son, now a little older and wiser beyond his years, I knew we were going to be okay. We had each other, and a future that was ours to shape. Hello, I'm Alexis, 29 years old, and I navigate a delicate balance between my professional life at home and in the office. My husband, Bruce, who shares my age, has a deep affection for his mother, Doris. Unfortunately, Doris often treats me unkindly, which adds tension to our relationship. Despite these challenges, Bruce and I recently celebrated our second wedding anniversary, and I take pride in managing the complexities that come with it. Work has become my sanctuary, providing both an escape and a sense of fulfillment, leading to several promotions, an accomplishment not often seen among women in my field. Currently, I'm on a business trip in Europe for crucial meetings. During one of these meetings, my phone, which was on silent, vibrated insistently, a sign that something unusual was happening. I noticed 5 missed calls from Doris and felt a wave of concern. Thinking it might be an emergency, I decided to step outside to return her call. Just as I was about to dial, she called again. "Hello, Alexis, where are you?" she demanded, her annoyance evident. I hesitated, disliking her tone, but responded, "Hi, Doris, I'm in a meeting. Is everything okay?" "Where are you?" she repeated, impatience dripping from her words. Though her demeanor irritated me, I was determined to avoid confrontation. "I'm sorry, Doris. Didn't Bruce tell you? I'm on a business trip, and can we talk later?" "Bruce mentioned it, but what are you doing leaving your house and husband alone?" "Come home immediately," she insisted, her abruptness as usual. "I can't leave right now. I'm in the middle of something important," I began to explain, but she cut me off. "You're so controlling, even though you're just Bruce's wife." I don't care about your excuses. Come home right now. Her sharp words stung, but I needed to keep my composure for the sake of my professional responsibilities. Do you realize the significance of today? I asked, bewildered. Oh, you really don't know. She smirked slightly. We're celebrating my 62nd birthday today. Her tone dripped with expectation and triumph, catching me off guard. I remembered her birthday was later in the month, and this revelation was particularly surprising since I was on a business trip. Bruce and I had planned a special dinner at an upscale restaurant to celebrate her milestone. I was growing weary of Doris's incessant attempts to control every situation, which seemed to escalate every year, especially when I was busy with work. As I mentioned, I can't come back home today. I'm away on business, I explained calmly. That's amusing, she shot back sarcastically. I spoke to Bruce earlier, and he's taken the day off for me. All the relatives will be there. But you're always buried in work. You seem so detached. How do you think that makes your husband's family feel? Her words were meant to hurt, and I knew engaging further would only escalate the situation. Since I was still in a meeting, I had little choice but to end the call. I'm sorry, but I can't attend your birthday celebration today, I said firmly. Doris's tone shifted, frustration evident in her voice. Fine then, I won't consider you part of the family anymore. Don't bother coming back, it's like a divorce. Bruce deserves better. Her sharp remarks left me angry and distressed, but I refused to escalate the argument over the phone. All right, we can discuss this when I get back. I'm sorry, but I need to go now, I replied, trying to keep my tone steady. What's with that attitude? Doris snapped back. I told you not to come back. I'll talk to Bruce myself. With that, she hung up. Exhausted from my interaction with my mother-in-law, I returned to my meeting, letting out a deep sigh. After 3 grueling days of back-to-back meetings, I finally headed home, my mind consumed with anger and frustration from the confrontation with Doris. I barely registered the drive, lost in my thoughts. When I opened the front door and called out, my husband Bruce greeted me with a weary, "Welcome back." I slipped off my heels and made my way into the living room, leaving my luggage by the entrance. There, surrounded by a sea of cardboard boxes, I found Bruce, visibly sweating as he sealed them with tape. What's with all the boxes? I asked, my curiosity piqued. Bruce explained that they contained my belongings. He went on to recount how, during Doris's 62nd birthday celebration, the very day she had called me, she announced to everyone that I had neglected her birthday and been rude on the phone. To my shock, she told the relatives that she wanted me divorced and sent back to my parents' house because I wasn't a suitable match for her son. This was classic Doris. I pressed Bruce for more details. And then what happened? Did your mother tell you to get a divorce and you just agreed to it? No, I didn't exactly agree, Bruce replied, his voice weary. But she insisted I pack up your stuff. I felt cornered. What was I supposed to do? He paused his packing, looking defeated. What do you mean you didn't argue with her? Does this mean you're okay with the idea of us getting a divorce? My confusion and frustration were mounting. Bruce then shared that his father, Russell, had sided with Doris, telling him, if Doris is upset, it'll be hard on you. It's best to just do what she says. Bruce had reluctantly gone along with the idea of a divorce, leaving me stunned by how easily he seemed to accept his mother's demands. What is wrong with your family? I pondered aloud. Your father is dominated by your mother, and you just blindly obey her too. I felt utterly alone, as if no one was standing by me. After a long silence, Bruce finally spoke. What my mother decides is final, but it's only until she calms down and things settle. This divorce isn't real. I'll come for you when things get better. His eyes pleaded with me for understanding, and I wished he would direct that pleading towards his mother instead. How could a grown man like Bruce be so fearful of his mother? I thought, a mix of disappointment and disbelief washing over me. It felt like there was no salvaging this situation. I nearly felt ashamed as I questioned what I had ever seen in him. As I processed everything, I realized this might be an unexpected opportunity for liberation. Staying with Bruce meant facing Doris's antagonism and her constant insinuations about divorce. Parting ways might actually turn out to be a stroke of good fortune. I was more than capable of supporting myself, and living alone wouldn't mean deprivation of any kind. With this newfound clarity, I faced Bruce and said firmly, let's proceed with the divorce. After that, I dialed Doris's number. After several attempts, she finally answered. Hello, I said softly. As you wish, we're getting a divorce, I informed her. To my surprise, Doris's voice was unnaturally cheerful as she replied, yes. Finally, you realize you're not good enough for Bruce. I'm so relieved. Don't worry, I'll find him a new wife, someone obedient, pretty, and nice to her in-laws. Her words dripped with a misplaced sense of victory as she added, I'm sure Bruce will be just fine. I'll take care of him until he finds his next wife. You don't need to worry about that. Enduring her barrage of sarcasm, I retorted, well, don't misunderstand. It's not just about you. Still buoyed by her mood, Doris snapped back, oh, you're just a sore loser. Don't worry about me or Bruce, Alexis. I got the divorce papers from the city office and gave them to Bruce. Don't forget to sign them. With that, she hung up. Bruce, who had overheard my conversation, looked oddly relieved. This prompted me to question his awareness of the situation. By the way, does your mother know you're actually a full-time house husband? How could I tell her that? He replied, his tone turning serious. My mother is obsessed with the idea that I'm a high-ranking employee at a big company. Right, I acknowledged, reflecting on his behavior. It dawned on me that Bruce had never been transparent with Doris. At home, he lounged in worn-out sweatshirts but switched to a suit whenever he met her, pretending to be at work whenever she called. Elisa had proudly proclaimed at her birthday party that Bruce was such a devoted son, taking time off just to be there. She also boasted about his supposed status, claiming he could easily find a more obedient and attractive wife than me. This facade, maintained for the sake of appearances, was part of the bizarre dynamics that had steered our relationship to this point. The truth's revelation seemed inevitable once our divorce was finalized, but Doris, who held her son in such high esteem, would likely never anticipate that Bruce was no longer employed at the prestigious company he once worked for. In fact, he had left that job about a year ago. What Doris perceived as her elite, high-status son was now an unemployed, full-time house husband. Bruce's departure from his job stemmed from a significant mistake that led to a demotion, a pay cut, and a formal apology. He had likely kept this hidden from his mother, fearing her reaction. The setback had a profound effect on him, especially given Doris's tendency to coddle him. The mere thought of returning to an office environment and facing the repercussions of his error triggered immense anxiety and nausea. Initially, he tried to manage the situation by reporting his absences and requesting paid leave. But eventually, he stopped calling altogether. As his unauthorized absences piled up, he was terminated. Now, without any intention of seeking new employment, Bruce relied heavily on my income, knowing that sharing this with Doris would unleash both her fury and disappointment. I felt a twinge of regret at the thought of not witnessing Doris's reaction upon discovering her son's situation after my departure. I imagined she would be utterly shocked, perhaps even to an extreme degree. However, that was no longer my concern. When Bruce handed me the divorce papers, he mentioned that they were merely a facade to appease his mother. Okay, I said, processing the information. I promptly filed the papers and signed a lease for a new apartment, planning to move out as soon as possible. A month later, to my surprise, Doris called. Despite believing I had severed ties for good, curiosity got the better of me, and I answered, "What do you want now? Aren't you happy to be rid of me?" I asked, my voice tinged with sarcasm. "You're still the same. Just listen to me," Doris replied, her tone unchanged. As she spoke about Bruce, she revealed that since my departure, she had visited his apartment multiple times to help with chores, only to find him idly lounging in his room each time, with no indication of going to work or being ill. Suppressing a laugh, I responded nonchalantly, "Well, Bruce is like that because he has no intention of working again." Doris, seemingly oblivious to her role in the situation, shockingly asked, "Alexis, can you do something about it?" "Why should I? You didn't want me in your family and wanted nothing to do with me," I retorted. It was so typical of her to ask for help only when it suited her after having mistreated me for so long. The irony of the situation was not lost on me, and I felt a sense of vindication as I realized the full extent of her self-inflicted predicament. Doris then tried to pin the blame on me. "I was wondering if you said something to Bruce before you left." I was incredulous at her insinuation. "Really, Doris? You think I married Bruce just for a luxurious life? Why would the divorce hurt if that were true?" She eyed me suspiciously as if I had married Bruce solely for his wealth. "Are you kidding me? I was the one supporting Bruce financially throughout our marriage. It was me providing for him, not the other way around. Because of him, I couldn't even afford to live extravagantly, I continued, the thought crossing my mind of whether I should consider asking for alimony. Doris was taken aback by my statement. How dare you make up something like that, Alexis? You just forgot to ask for alimony, didn't you? Bruce has a higher income and position than you. Don't be so unreasonable. If you want money, Bruce can pay whatever you want. After all, he is a high-level employee at a major company, she retorted, her argument as preposterous as ever. Perhaps Bruce had yet to tell her the truth. I didn't want to seem like I was merely gossiping. But I saw an opportunity to set the record straight. Your proud son is a full-time house husband. He quit his job a long time ago, I revealed. You're lying, Doris shouted, her voice so loud that I winced, fearing for my eardrums. Pulling the phone away from my ear, I suggested, why don't you check with his company? You'll find out who's telling the truth. Doris went silent for a moment, then her tone noticeably softened. Well, what if that's true? How are we going to manage? I can't support my son on just my pension, and no one will want to marry him if he's unemployed. What are we going to do? I couldn't help but grin at her sudden change of heart. What shall we do? I echoed, amusement lacing my voice. After a pause, she mumbled something to someone beside her then, with a completely altered tone, she pleaded, Hey Alexis, will you please come back home? Her sudden shift puzzled me, but I replied firmly, No, we're already divorced. I wouldn't come back to your family if heaven and earth turned upside down. The finality in my voice marked the end of that chapter as I moved on from the convoluted ties that had bound me. As I spoke to Doris, a commotion erupted in the background. Someone was shouting. It sounded like Bruce. His voice cut through the noise. I told you I'd come for you when things settled down. Doris quickly responded, Yes, you could remarry my son if you wanted. What are you talking about? I asked, baffled. No way. I wouldn't do it for the world. Don't joke about this. I made it clear to Doris that I had no interest in rekindling anything with her son or entangling myself in any more toxic dynamics. I was done with someone who was overly devoted to his mother. I did what you asked, so please stop changing your mind, Doris retorted. But the tension was palpable, even through the phone. It's not like you should take my words so seriously. You've been quite dismissive, haven't you? She added. I didn't think you'd go through with divorcing my son. Her tone revealed her surprise at my firm rejection. In response to Doris's string of excuses, I replied, Well, I was just tolerating the situation. Besides, Bruce packed up my things and essentially kicked me out without my consent. I vented my frustration, listing all that she had orchestrated against me. That was just a prank, she claimed nonchalantly. A prank? It's worse than that, I said, utterly exasperated. There was nothing more to be said. Glancing at my watch, I noted it was nearly 2:00 p.m. My lunch break had been squandered on this fruitless conversation. Doris, are you done now? I asked, eager to wrap things up. Alexis, what did you say? She replied, her voice sickeningly sweet. Did she think a sweet tone would soften my response? Knowing I wouldn't meet her expectations, I said firmly, I'm going to hang up now. I have another meeting in a few minutes and need to review some documents. As I began to disconnect the call, Doris persisted. Wait, Alexis. Hey, Alexis, say something. I could hear her shouting as I hung up, leaving the chaos and unwelcome entreaties behind me. I was ready to move forward, free from the turmoil that had entangled me for too long. During the chaos of our phone call, Doris took the opportunity to berate Bruce, chiding him for mishandling the situation and pointing out the consequences of his actions. It became evident as she was quick to blame everyone else for her troubles. Completely drained by her behavior, I ended the call and decided to block her number for good. Afterward, Bruce tried repeatedly to reach me. Seeing a clear path forward, I consulted my lawyer about seeking alimony. Faced with the prospect of legal action, Bruce's family, likely anxious about the ramifications, agreed to settle the alimony in a lump sum payment. It seemed my former in-laws had to advance the money, which left Russell and Doris constantly agitated with Bruce. They urged him daily to find a job, which only added to his frustrations. Ultimately, Bruce moved back into his parents' house because he could no longer afford his apartment rent. He blamed his parents for his situation, which strained their finances, including their pension and retirement savings. Like mother, like son, they continued to blame each other for their predicaments while refusing to reflect on their contributions to the mess they were in. They were even considering applying for welfare, a move I hoped would make them realize that their selfish behavior couldn't continue indefinitely. On a brighter note for me, the business proposal I made during my trip was accepted, leading to a significant contract. This achievement resulted in another promotion, a higher salary, and a more affluent lifestyle. Now, enjoying the freedom of a rich bachelor's existence, I was relieved to be free from the torment of in-laws and financial dependence on family members. Reflecting on the past, if I ever considered marriage again, I would undoubtedly conduct a thorough background check to avoid any mama's boys or troublesome in-laws. Hannah suggested that I move into a budget-friendly apartment, believing my home-based activities didn't justify my living in the family house. Fresh from the city, she was determined to take my place in the home I shared with my in-laws. They never truly understood my work-from-home lifestyle, and now, with Hannah's influence, even my husband, William, seemed to conspire against me. It was disheartening that they didn't recognize that I was the one shouldering the mortgage for the house. The realization hit me hard. Why should I remain with people who made me feel unwanted? If they were so eager for me to leave, then that was exactly what I would do. I had reached my limit, and fueled by frustration, I decided to transfer the mortgage responsibilities to them. After making that choice, I ended my marriage with William and stepped away, unaware of the challenges they would soon face without me. My name is Amy. William, my husband, was 3 years older than me. Our paths crossed at work, but ours was no ordinary workplace romance. William worked for the janitorial service at my office. Life had dealt me a harsh blow when I lost both my parents in quick succession. My father fell ill and was given only 5 months to live. During his illness, my mother also succumbed to her own health problems. With their passing, I was left to navigate life alone, having no siblings or parents to turn to. The grief would often overwhelm me at unexpected moments, bringing me to tears. Yet I masked my sorrow with smiles, especially at work. The day William and I first truly connected, I was lost in thought by a window trying to hide my pain. Although we had exchanged nods before, we had never really talked. That day, William approached me, checking in on my somber mood. Opening up to him felt surprisingly easy, perhaps because he was somewhat of a stranger. When he learned about my parents, his empathy provided comfort. He shared his close relationship with his own parents, which helped me feel less alone in my sense of loss. This marked the beginning of our conversations and eventually our relationship outside of work. When we started dating, William introduced me to his parents, who welcomed me warmly and offered kindness in light of my situation. Our bond with his family deepened effortlessly, leading us to marriage without the need for a traditional proposal. After our wedding, we found a cozy apartment near his parents and embarked on a new life together, envisioning a future that might include starting a family. I shifted careers to a remote role for more flexibility. Although I shared this significant change with William, he didn't fully grasp what it entailed. He knew I worked from home, but the nuances of my job were a mystery to him. Despite the job change, my income remained stable, allowing me to cover our living expenses. William earned less, so we agreed he would save his earnings. His financial contributions were minimal, primarily because his social life was modest and inexpensive, mostly involving outings with me or friends. He was comfortable with me managing our finances, which suited us well. Working remotely brought many benefits, including the joy of sharing leisurely meals with William, a luxury I never had at my old job. Cooking had once been a simple affair, but eager to please him, I found delight in preparing more intricate meals. Our life together felt tranquil and fulfilling. However, a few years into our marriage, an unexpected crisis struck. A devastating fire destroyed William's childhood home, erasing cherished memories and belongings. Thankfully, his parents were safe, but the loss was immense. They moved in with us temporarily, and I sought to uplift them, much like they had supported me through my own parents' deaths. I took on additional household duties and made comforting meals while managing my work. Despite our best efforts to make them feel at home, William's parents were acutely aware of the dependence on us and expressed concerns about overstaying their welcome. They clearly longed for their independence, which led William and me to a significant decision. We would build a new home to accommodate all of us. Although we had never explicitly discussed this before, it felt right given our circumstances. I had been saving diligently, separate from William's savings, and the timing seemed perfect to use those funds to construct a new home, a place symbolizing a fresh start for his parents while honoring the past. The original house, a charming wooden structure built by my great-grandfather, held many memories but was no longer practical. Our decision to build a new house was met with joy and gratitude from William's parents, marking the beginning of an exciting new chapter for all of us. This collaborative effort was a testament to our family's resilience in the face of adversity. As William's parents aged, their health concerns grew, leading to numerous special requests for the new house we planned to build. Eager to ensure their comfort, William proposed several additional features, which of course drove the cost significantly higher than we had initially planned. Despite the escalating expenses, we were determined to make it work. I embraced the enhancements for our new home, believing in the long-term benefits they would bring. Around this time, I began to notice a shift in dynamics between William and his parents, Samantha and Tyler. He started to assert himself as the primary force behind the house's construction, and they frequently expressed their gratitude to him while overlooking my financial contributions entirely. Despite the mortgage and ownership documents being in my name and the down payment coming from my savings, it seemed William hadn't shared these details with them. His constant claims led his parents to pressure me into showing gratitude for something I felt I had rightfully contributed to. My contributions weren't about seeking acknowledgement from William, Samantha, or Tyler. I contributed more financially simply because I was able to, not out of a desire for thanks. However, William's failure to correct his parents' misconceptions, combined with his jokes about my supposed indebtedness to him, left me feeling deeply frustrated. I didn't demand he disclose the full extent of my contributions, but I hoped he would at least stop diminishing my role. Instead, he seemed emboldened by the house construction project, and to my dismay, I discovered he was spreading falsehoods about his employment, falsely claiming the connection to the prestigious company I was associated with. While he did have business interactions with them, the way he presented it was misleading. This pattern of dishonesty and inflated self-importance eroded my trust in him, making interactions with his parents increasingly uncomfortable as they seemed to favor him unconditionally. I had hoped moving into our new home would alleviate these tensions, but the opposite happened. Once we settled in, the underlying issues intensified. William and his parents failed to understand the legitimacy of my remote work, misinterpreting my home-based job as leisure. Complaints about my supposed idleness became more frequent, accompanied by insinuations that I should contribute more despite my financial support and ongoing work commitments. Their attitudes drove me to seek refuge outside our home, opting to work from a cafe just to escape the constant snide remarks. This change in my work environment was a direct response to the growing discomfort and misunderstanding within my own home, highlighting the deepening divide between us. I continually urged William to address his parents' misconceptions about my work. While he might not fully grasp the nature of my job, it was my income that sustained our household, including his parents. All I wanted was for him to communicate this simple truth to them. However, William dismissed my concerns, suggesting I ignore their comments. Consequently, with the perception that I wasn't working, I became burdened with all the household chores, and his parents began to treat me like their personal assistant. Reaching my breaking point, I confronted them, expecting William's support during my moment of distress. Instead, he rebuked me for speaking out and shockingly presented me with divorce papers as a threat to conform to their expectations. His unprecedented anger and ultimatum left me feeling powerless, forcing me to reluctantly acquiesce to their demands. Following this incident, both William and his parents became distinctly indifferent towards me, leaving me with only my work as a respite, a means to escape the harsh reality of my home life. During this tumultuous period, Hannah, William's sister, came to visit our new home and decided to extend her stay. Almost immediately, William's parents began to air their grievances about me to her, criticizing me for spending too much time isolated with my computer and insinuating that I was neglecting my responsibilities. I felt as though I was living off their generosity without contributing, and they mocked my dedication to my work, questioning its validity and jesting that I must be a nerd for being so engaged with technology, all while suggesting I did nothing meaningful. Their conversations took a demeaning turn as they speculated about my past role, incorrectly suggesting that I had been a cleaner at William's company. This speculation was fueled by William's deceitful claims about his employment, creating an inverted narrative where he was positioned as a high-ranking employee while I was cast as a menial worker. This fabricated reality left me isolated and discredited. When Hannah announced her decision to move in permanently after quitting her job in the apparel industry, citing a desire for change and the pleasure of starting a business from our new, more luxurious home, my situation worsened. Her decision was met with enthusiasm from William and his parents, further marginalizing me in my own home. I found myself relegated to eating alone, preparing meals for a family that no longer included me at their table, all while juggling my work responsibilities. This arrangement persisted until Hannah's departure date, when she unexpectedly declared her intention to stay indefinitely, finding the house comfortable and seizing the opportunity to reset her career. Her announcement was celebrated by William's parents and William himself, who took pride in the praise for the house, solidifying my position as an outsider within my own home. Despite Hannah's recent decision to stay with us permanently, there was no specific room allocated for her. Until her announcement, she had been occupying the guest room, but her new permanent status required a more permanent solution, and our house lacked additional space. After spending 2 weeks with us, Hannah boldly stated her expectation for me to vacate. "I'll live here, so you should leave," she declared confidently, suggesting that my home-based lifestyle didn't merit a place in such a desirable home. She insinuated that I should find a less expensive living arrangement elsewhere. Samantha, aligning with Hannah, dismissed my attempts to explain the validity of my work, leaving me defenseless against their baseless judgments. The assertion that I was unproductive simply because I worked from home was a tactic used to pressure me unfairly. Frustration mounted within me as William passively observed the unfolding drama, neither defending the truth nor correcting the misconceptions. Up to this point, I had remained silent, mindful of William's feelings, but the situation compelled me to assert the truth openly. I confronted Samantha, Tyler, and Hannah, making it clear that the house was registered in my name, the mortgage payments were my responsibility, and the initial down payment had come from my savings, without any financial contribution from William. William's reaction was one of panic, quickly turning into defensive aggression as he attempted to further discredit me, desperately clinging to the facade he had built. His parents and Hannah stood by him, labeling me the liar. It became clear to me that leaving this toxic environment might be the only way to preserve my sanity, especially since they erroneously believed William could handle the financial burden of the household. Determined to extricate myself from this untenable situation, I reconsidered the divorce papers that William had once brandished as a threat. The prospect of transferring the house title to him initially seemed to please him, as he likely envisioned gaining full ownership without grasping the responsibilities that came with it. However, when it came time to change the mortgage into his name, William's true aversion to the complexities of the process became apparent. He naively thought it would be as simple as signing his name, unaware of the legal and financial implications involved. Reluctantly, I accompanied the oblivious William to the bank and to a legal advisor for the necessary consultations. Throughout the meeting, William was fixated on his smartphone, showing little interest until it was time to sign the documents. Eagerly, he asked if this would officially transfer the house into his name. Upon my confirmation, he signed with enthusiasm, completely oblivious to the realities of his new obligations. Once the legal procedures were finalized, the house, along with its mortgage responsibilities, would indeed be transferred to him. I had painstakingly explained the situation multiple times, yet I knew it would only be the full weight of his new role as the sole proprietor that would reveal the true extent of his misconceptions and the financial obligations he had underestimated. I couldn't help but marvel at William's reaction. Even after the transfer of the house and mortgage into his name, he jubilantly shared the news with Samantha, Hannah, and Tyler, still basking in the glow of his perceived success. It baffled me how they could continue to entertain the notion that William was employed by a prestigious company while viewing me as jobless. Watching this unfold filled me with disbelief and a sense of liberation, knowing my next steps were clear. Following the transfer, William planned a trip to celebrate the divorce, instructing me to vacate the house during their absence. They embarked on a lavish trip abroad, expecting me to disappear quietly. Instead, I took decisive action during those 12 days. I sold all the furniture and appliances I had brought into our shared home, packing my personal items as I finalized the sale of a luxurious condo on the top floor of a high-rise building, a place that felt like it had been waiting for me, priced at around $8 million. The timing felt serendipitous, and I seized the opportunity to make it mine. The 3 years spent in turmoil with William's family had taken their toll, but the prospect of starting anew in my condo filled me with excitement. Unbeknownst to them, I had a substantial inheritance from my parents that I had wisely invested over the years, significantly increasing my wealth. I had once dreamed of sharing this fortune with William and retiring early together, but I kept this secret, a decision I now regarded as fortuitous. Their disregard for financial prudence had taught me a painful lesson, reinforcing my choice to keep my assets hidden. Moving to the condo allowed me to design a living space that truly reflected my tastes, free from the influence and criticism of William and his family. This new home became my sanctuary, where I could work in peace, surrounded by cherished objects and memories with no one to undermine my lifestyle. I looked forward to exploring new hobbies like joining a cooking class or yoga studio and embracing a tranquil life. Then, unexpectedly, I received a call from William upon his return. His voice was filled with shock and indignation as he discovered the absence of the furniture and appliances. He demanded their return, failing to understand that every item had been purchased with my money, thus it was my right to sell or move them as I pleased. I felt no obligation to leave behind any part of my life with them, wanting to sever all ties to a household that had brought me so much distress. In my new condo, I was truly free, ready to enjoy a life of peace and fulfillment far removed from the turmoil of the past. When I informed William that the items were already sold, he persisted, demanding I repurchase them. I countered by suggesting that someone with a job at a major corporation like him should have no trouble buying new ones. With that, I ended the call and ignored his subsequent attempts to contact me. 2 months after William and his family returned from their celebratory trip abroad, I had fully embraced my new life, forming friendships with my neighbors and enjoying various activities such as cooking classes recommended by a friend living just below my condo. One day, as I returned from a class, William called again, curious yet cautious. I answered, wondering if there was a lingering issue with the paperwork. His voice was filled with panic and confusion, echoing the chaos of their return. He was upset over discovering the monthly loan repayment amount of $6,100 and questioned why the loan hadn't been settled. He seemed completely unaware of the financial responsibilities that now lay with him, despite the bank's thorough explanation, which he had clearly ignored. His disbelief that the mortgage wasn't paid off revealed just how little attention he had paid during the transfer process. I vividly recalled sitting beside him, observing his disinterest, and now he was frantically seeking a way out of his new obligations. But it was too late. He had already signed the mortgage over to his name. William's realization that he was solely responsible for the loan repayments marked a turning point. His assumption that I would be struggling after the divorce was utterly baseless. I had managed our finances throughout our marriage, ensuring a comfortable life for both of us. Reflecting on the past 5 months, I pondered William's lifestyle with his family, likely living beyond their means under Hannah's influence until the reality of the mortgage finally hit them. His predicament felt distant to me now, as if it belonged to a stranger, and I found myself indifferent to their financial woes. I took a moment to enlighten William about my current situation, living comfortably in a luxurious condo thanks to my successful investments. His silence on the phone was telling, and after that revelation his calls ceased, leading me to believe he had somehow coped with his situation. Unexpectedly, William reached out again, reigniting the connection I thought had been severed. Despite our history, I felt a sense of detachment as our lives had diverged significantly since the divorce. My focus remained on my newfound independence and tranquility, far removed from the complexities of my previous life with him and his family. When William called this time, I wondered what urgent matter had prompted his reach. It turned out to be a crisis. Their house was in the process of being seized. In the background, I could hear the anxious voices of his family, Samantha, Tyler, and Hannah, each filled with desperation. William, panic evident in his voice, pleaded for my help. An enforcement officer was at their doorstep, explaining that the house was set for auction and they were on the verge of eviction. I was genuinely surprised when I inquired about any warning letters, suggesting they hadn't received any. Upon further questioning, he sheepishly admitted that such letters might have been intentionally overlooked, opened without any action taken. Each family member seemed to assume that someone else was managing the loan repayments. As the reality of their situation sank in, foreclosure looming, and the full loan amount demanded immediately, I couldn't help expressing my frustration at William's apparent hopelessness. I suggested pooling their savings as a potential solution, only to be met with the bleak reality that such an option was off the table. Samantha and Tyler had depleted their savings on lavish travels, banking on their son's future support, while Hannah hadn't left her job by choice. she'd been fired for embezzling funds, a far cry from the successful city life she claimed to lead. The financial facade they maintained crumbled, revealing a dire situation. William had exhausted his savings, living under the pretense of a lucrative job while his family indulged in extravagance, all under the false assumption that their financial stability was secure. The accumulation of these poor decisions led to the inevitable seizure of their home. In the midst of this chaos, William made a desperate proposition for all of us to live together in my luxury condo, as if our divorce hadn't severed our legal and emotional ties. My response was firm and unequivocal. I refused. Our divorce marked the end of our shared paths, and my new life in the condo was a sanctuary built for my independence and success, far removed from the turmoil and deceit that had characterized our marriage. As the saga unfolded, my resolve hardened, especially after hearing my ex-in-laws, Samantha, Tyler, and Hannah, hurling insults at me in the background of the call. They called me heartless, a scammer, and a thief, only solidifying my decision to cut ties with them. Their bitterness and blame were a direct consequence of their own choices, showing no signs of self-reflection or remorse. Eventually, their argument spiraled inward, turning into a cacophony of blame among themselves. At that moment, I chose to sever all ties, quietly ending the call and ensuring no further contact by blocking William's number. A few days later, a newspaper headline caught my eye, detailing a father-son altercation that escalated to police intervention, immediately raising suspicions about William and his family. Confirmation came through a mutual acquaintance, revealing the dispute did indeed involve them and stemmed from tensions that boiled over after my last conversation with William. The altercation led to their arrest and minor injuries for all involved, along with a police warning. This incident not only bruised their physical well-being but also tarnished William's professional reputation, as rumors of the fight spread through his workplace, leaving him in a precarious position. Following the fight, the house was sold and the family relocated to a dilapidated apartment, a stark contrast to their previous living conditions. Their new life was marred by infestations and neighborly complaints, marking a significant downgrade. Hannah's history of embezzlement further complicated their attempts to stabilize, making it nearly impossible for her to secure employment. Thus, the family's financial burden fell solely on William, who, despite his efforts to locate me, found his inquiries fruitless thanks to the discretion of our mutual friends and the vigilance of my condo's concierge service. This chapter of my life, filled with turmoil and strife, felt conclusively closed as I embraced my new existence in the luxury condo. Far removed from the chaos, my days were now filled with hobbies, work, and the peaceful solitude of single life. The decision to move forward, unencumbered by the past or thoughts of marriage, was not just a choice but a declaration of my newfound independence and contentment.